Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Boop a doop a doop boop boop a doop a doop boop. Hey, hi everybody. Thank you for that host, Atomica. Don't think I wasn't gonna go and turn on the chat so I can get that song in, because I need that excuse for some singing. That is just a true statement. I've already eaten too much candy today, but PH, I was gonna give you more candy. I thought that you might want it. We have Origami Shuriken. How are you, by the way? Hey. You know what? I think I've got this command, and I think I can do this, right? So, no, that's not it. Hold on. If you all don't know Origami Shuriken is awesome. She is GMing a game called Ghosts of Saltmaw, which is like she took the Ghosts of Saltmarsh setting and decided, bah, and made it, sci-fi, and there's like space and like planets, and it's super, super cool. And she runs that over on Otherdoc, and you should watch it because I guested in it one time, and I will guest in it another time, sometime in the future times. Hey, hiccuping boots. I gotta tell you, having the mic in front of on the screen just messes with my chat, but we'll do this, it'll be fine. Yeah, and also Origami Shuriken and I have played in some RPGs together, and it was very fun. Dark Matter with Salty Goats, yes. So this is my San Francisco shirt that I got from back in the day. Can I tell you all something? I need to tell you something about San Francisco. How are you getting settled into the new place? How am I getting settled? I'm going to tell you something, hiccuping boots. I feel like I've crossed the line. Like there's a line when you're moving. Hey, Ice Bunny. And so I am not fully unpacked. As you can see by those boxes right there. There are 3 boxes right there that I have not unpacked. There are 3 boxes in my bedroom that are not unpacked. And there are 10 boxes in the living room that are not unpacked. But I started, so that's like what, 10, that's 16 boxes that are not unpacked. But I started off with 40 something boxes, and there's this moment when you're moving, for those of you who've done it, I don't know how you feel, but for me, there's this moment when you first move into a place and you feel really unpacked. Do you know what I mean? Like you feel unpacked, you feel unsettled, you feel like you cannot start your life because everything is in a box. And, oh no, Krellin, I unpacked 3 boxes yesterday. I actually did a whole bunch yesterday. I unpacked 3 boxes that were all kitchen boxes, and then realized that my cupboard space is not enough. So then I decided which of my dishes I was going to not have with me and which of my dishes I would. So then I packed up a whole box. I repacked a box full of dishes and cups that I felt like I could probably do without. So that was basically 4 boxes, and that has now given me more space in the cupboards for food. So I did a lot. Right, so like that was pretty good. So like there's that moment where you just like, you feel like you can't start your life, nothing is happening because everything is all unsettled. And then as you unpack, you still feel that way. And then there's a moment when you cross a line where, although you still have boxes to unpack, you feel like you're basically in a house now, if that makes any sense. Ironically, the party has not encountered a single ghost on Saltmaw Station yet. I should fix that. You should. I have ideas. Also, PH has good ideas about what you should stream on your channel. RPGs, campaign building. But also, you also do, you're an amazing knitter as well. Crochet, knit and crochet, both knitting and crocheting. You could probably do some knitting and crocheting tutorials on your channel. That could be cool as well. But you didn't unpack the boxes in the background. If you don't, that we're going to get used to. That's fair. I'm hoping to get to them very, very soon. Have I actually shopped for food yet? Have I actually shopped for food yet? Yine. On the first day that I was here, actually, when I went out and I got some emergency food, like I got milk and yogurt and some cereal, things like that, bread. So I got like the basics that I would need. So I got some basic food shopping done, but I'm hoping. Oh no. My connection to the PS4 cut out on me. That's a little distressing. I wonder what that means. We're gonna have to think about that. So I got like some basics, like just some emergency basics, but I'm hoping to tomorrow play access mini sign in. Okay. Hey everybody, I got signed out of my PS4, which is not a good sign. For playing. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so we'll how that goes. Anyway, I cannot connect. Hint: connect via the internet on the PS4. Activate. Is your prime? What is going on? Oh my goodness, people. We have some things happening that my PS4 is being weird, and I don't know why. We have to figure out what's going on there, and we'll have to figure out what's happening with that because my PS4 just cut off, and I have to figure out what is that about. Yes. So anyway, I need to I think tomorrow do real grocery shopping. And let me see what my PS4 is being weird, everybody. Let's see. Yeah, I need to not get used to them being there either. And the thing is, these are things I just actually need to get through and figure out what's in there. PH says, if you don't need the stuff in the boxes, why unpack them? Parentor's like, yes. Well, these are things that I do need. Also, by the way, I'm seeing a FedEx truck drive by. It might be for me at the worst possible timing. If they knock on my door, I might have to go get it, and I have to figure out what's going on with my PS4. Anyway, the thing is, the stuff in those boxes are things that I'm going to need eventually. I just don't need them at this moment to feel like I've actually I'm in a place. For example, that box right there has got a bunch of school stuff in it. School related things like research stuff and papers, research papers, and I actually do need to go through them and figure out which of the research papers I need and which ones I don't. So we'll have to think about that. Hey Kate, hey Hawkeye, Hey Coming Boot says it feels like you're in a place rather than just building. Yes. Knitting and nitpicking. Ooh, PH, that's a good title. Speaking of foods, I've got to get some pasta cooking. You knit and complain about stuff. Next to Kin said, I would totally watch knitting tutorials. PH, take your medication. That's important. Yeah, I know, I learned that there's left-handed knitting and right-handed knitting, and that was stuff that I didn't know, so that's pretty exciting. Atomic says, someone take a screenshot, and when he actually unpacks, we can send a cardboard cutout to keep background continuity. That would be important. Yeah, the makers and crafting community on Twitch is really nice. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff in there. Have you found some shops that have food, and do you have Haken Porsche to do this shopping? I do not have a Haken Porsche to do the shopping, and I know that there's like an Aldi and a Wegmans, and there's a place that's not too far from here. And I have eaten today, and I will have a really nice sandwich, I think, after I'm done with the stream today. Origami Shuriken says, oh yes, I could definitely do a stitch and bitch about the adaptation process for Salt Maw. Spoilers, the salty ghost is me. By the way, it looks like the post office person is here, which is very exciting, but I can't get my mail because they still have not given me the mailroom key. The key to my mailbox. So that's very distressing because I would like to I would like to be able to get my mail. I have mail. The mail person probably right now is putting mail in my mailbox, and the management company has not given me a mailroom key. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, do we need the PS4 gaming? Will not happen. It will either, if we don't do the PS4 gaming, we will do Wander Song, which I don't like to do, but or something slightly different. You should order groceries and have them delivered so you are stocked but can rock out on what you have left to unpack. Ooh, Barontor, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Oh, PH school supplies like binders, scissors, and pencils. It's true. Actually, I have a bunch of school supplies in there as well. Like I've got like my staplers in there. Like there's a bunch of like that kind of school supply stuff that I just haven't unpacked yet that I will need to. Ooh, the name game. Come on, everybody. I said now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name, I treat it like it wasn't there, and then a B or an F, or an M will appear, and then I say bow at a B, then I say the name, then banana, fanner, and foe. Then I say the name again with an F very plain, then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can't rhyme. Thunair, 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 bobunair, banana, fanna, fo, thunair, fee, fi, mo, munair. Thunair. Thank you for that resub, Thunair. I don't like mail. It's always people wanting money from me. Thunair. I get a lot of that. I get a lot of people wanting money from me. Yeah. I'm not into it. Thank you for that resub. Thank you. It's been 15 months. You've been here for amazing 1,000 bazillion years. That's all I'm saying. Oh, let's see what we're saying. I had a fun experience last night, DM'd a session and ended up improving about 60% of what the party went improvising off on. Improvising when parties go off on an unexpected tangent is the best. I love that. Although, I have a thought about that because I saw a tweet that made me a little sad. The real mailroom key was the friend you made all along the way, assuming those friends are key-shaped. I need to make more friends that are key-shaped. This is a, hey, Schmelzer, how are you? This is a true statement. Origami says, our most recent module, I have taken almost every monster, trap, and villain in the dungeon and thrown them out the airlock because it was not balanced for the character level it claimed to be written for. That sometimes happens, you know. Rissa says, for no reason, Trooper, of the following colors, which is your preferred color? Black, dark blue, turquoise, gray, dark red, or dark green? Ooh, that's a great question. You know, I like dark green. And I like dark green because as a kid, I was sort of obsessed with Robin Hood, like that nice forest green, because I always thought it'd be really cool to be running around in a forest dressed in like forest green and loam green with like a quarterstaff and arrows and a rapier, because, you know, I think I'd seen too many of those kind of Hollywood films, but I'm into it. Atomic says, about 40 minutes from my RPG campaign finale. I'm not emotionally ready. Atomica. So here's the thing. Atomica, you're going to end this campaign. It's going to be amazing. And then you should have some kind of party to remember the campaign by. Some kind of, some kind of way to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. I have an idea of what might work here, because there's this weird thing with the PS4 that I learned, and we're gonna try something. You got a mandolin? Yes. Okay. So mandolins are awesome, and I support them immediately. Also, Atomica, like, have like a milkshake or something when the campaign is done. Do something like that. Something awesome. I blame Trooper for the dozens of times a week the song pops in my head at random. Oh, my work here is done. I appreciate it. Hey, Scabby Knack. I saw a tweet that made... It is... Okay, Paladin Hulk says, you saw a tweet that made you sad? Shocking. Yes, but I'll tell you why this one made me sad. So you were actually obsessed with Errol Flynn. I might have been obsessed with Errol Flynn, Krellin. I might have been. Also, Jason and the Argonauts and, like, the Harryhausen claymation skeletons. Those also were things. You've chosen well. Expected delivery. Hopefully you'll have a mailbox key soon. I hope so. I mean, apparently the mailman can get into my mailbox, or mail carrier. There's going to be some small post-campaign sessions to set up for future campaigns. I'm going to celebrate by deep diving into GURPS. Yes. So this is the tweet that I saw. And the thing is, I get what the tweet was trying to do, but it does that thing again that I don't like as much. So what the tweet was, GMs, you should never have a plan. You should never have a plan where you want the story to go, because that's basically bad if you do that. And you should always only be reacting to the players, and otherwise you're taking away their agency, and basically you're a bad GM if you have a plan. And here's the thing. I personally am very much like, that advice doesn't hit me, because I'm very much a sandbox GM who's very improvisatory, and that's my, like, in my preferred style. That's what I like to do. But not everybody is that style of GM, and not all players want that style of GM. And there are people who do modules, like an entire adventure path that takes you from level 1 to level 20 is pretty fixed in plot. And there are players who want that. Like, that's what they want. They want to do those things. And I just feel like don't call people a bad GM because they use styles that are not your style. That's all I'm saying. And the thing is, like, that's all I'm saying. That, like, not everybody wants that style, and it should be okay. Not only just, and also some GMs, that's not their strong point. Like, improvising is not their strong point. They do other things really well. And some players don't want a sandbox. Some players really want to go on a set adventure that has a beginning, middle, and end, and they want to go into that dungeon or whatever, right? And like, they want to do the Tomb of Horrors, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, my point is, like, I think it's really important for people to understand that their preferred style, including my own preferred style, is not the best style or the only style or the style that makes you a better person. That's all. Next up, Ken says, Mandolin, a stranger randomly once let me try his at a sketchy SF bus stop at like 10 p.m. That sounds so San Francisco. Next up, Ken, don't make forget I want to tell you something about San Francisco. Oh, I thought the tweet that made you sad was one about John. Oh, no, that really made me sad, too. That also made me sad. You have to give the player something to react and interact with sometimes, yeah. So, in other words, no plan, no story, no objective. Sometimes that does happen. Sometimes people do no plan, no story, no objective, and that is maybe not as great. I'm such a sandbox GM that I might as well be called Sierra. And sometimes the players that like one thing also like the other thing. Yeah, right. Sometimes you can do both. And when I'm running, for example, Cthulhu Confidential, that's a module. So then I work within those confines. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's. Have you ever played a sandbox campaign? Hawkeye, I love a good sandbox campaign, but again, you can do one well or you can do one not well. Just like you could do a module well or you can do a module not well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like if a person has had a really bad experience with a sandbox, it could be that sandbox wasn't done well or well enough for them or in a way that they liked, or they may not like sandboxes. If a person has had a really bad experience with a module, it could be that the module wasn't run well, or they don't like modules. Like, it could be any number of things. I like there being a plan even when I'm a player. Maybe don't railroad me, but have some kind of a plan, please. I try to make a point of it. It should be an interesting experience. Yeah, Hawkeye, I recommend you trying a sandbox campaign one of these days, but, when you're ready. When you're ready. Hello, take my lakeside cabin in the woods. Have you considered that you might just be a bad GM? Sure. Well, the thing is, here's what I think. Levi, this is what I'll tell you. I think I am a bad GM for some people. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think that's like when you get enlightenment, is when you realize that you are a bad GM for some people. And I think that's true. I think there are people for whom I would not be a great GM. I think there are people for whom I would be a great GM. And I think that even whoever we think of as like the greatest GMs in the world, they're going to be bad GMs for some people because their styles won't mesh. That's all. You know what I mean? That's all. Enjoy your cabin in the woods, Takadosh. CabinCon last weekend went off like, oh, that sounds fun. Tell us about Takadosh. Tell us about CabinCon. I want to hear more about this. I think the reason I love Sandbox so much is my first game was a railroader. If it wasn't the books, you couldn't do it. And you know, Atomica, some people actually really like being railroaded. They think it's super fun. I would argue even a Sandbox can't be fully placed in a plan. Probably a larger scale plan for the world rather than for the party, but still a plan. Oh, Javai, I mean, my NPCs have plans, but I don't have plans as a GM. Like when I run a Sandbox, as a GM, I don't have a plan. My NPCs have plans, and I personally, as a GM, am not invested in their plans. Their plans may happen or may not happen. You know, that's not where my interest as a GM lies. So there are people in the world who have plans, but as a GM, I'm not invested in any of those plans. I'm invested in finding out what happens. That's how I personally do it. But there are a lot of different ways of doing it. GMing for my nieces, says Origami Shuriken. I have learned to not only set the scene, but give them multiple choice suggestions for what they can do, like it's a choose your own adventure book, because they're under 12 and still learning how to role play. Yeah. Oh, Hawkeye, I can answer this question for you. I think, Krellin says, I think I'd be a really bad GM for murder hobos. He keep trying to give them consequences of violence and shit. You know, Krellin, here's the thing. I have GM for murder hobos, and I can do it. I don't enjoy myself though. Do you know what I mean? Like, because the thing is, I have studied so much the different styles and how to do them. I have GM for murder hobos back in the day. I tend not to anymore because I now have a choice not to do so. So I just don't tend to, but I can. I can GM for murder hobos, and it's just that I don't have fun. I make sure they have fun and they can have all the fun they want, and I will give them the murder hobo experience that they want, but I don't have fun. Like, that's not something that is fun for me personally. If you're not having fun being their GM, you're not a good GM for them. Krellin, that is so nice of you to say. Krellin, that is so nice of you to say. Krellin, you're going to get me all misty about that one. And I think one of the reasons why you've got me all misty about that is because people so often don't think that GMs should have fun. Or Verum says ideally everyone should be having fun, players included. The problem is, I don't know if you've seen this advice or if you've seen this comment. I see it all the time. I do not agree with it, but I see it all the time. And the comment is, the GM has fun when the players has fun. That is like the fun for the GM is the players having fun. And like that is said all the time. Basically telling the GM, all you need to do is just make sure your players are having fun. You kind of don't have to worry about yourself, because if the players are having fun, you'll be having fun. But I'm telling you, I have GM'd many a game where the players were having fun and I was not having fun, and they were all murder hobos. And I did it. Do you know what I mean? Like I did it. I did the whole thing, and they had fun, but I wasn't having fun. And so like I really hate that bit of GM advice where the GM has fun if the players are having fun, because that is not necessarily true. It ain't necessarily so, to quote the song. And that makes me sad. Atomic says, you might give some structure. For instance, my campaign started with the players being investigators in a company. This gave me opportunities to give them small individual hooks, and some players got more hooks than others. I got to see who was more invested and got a feel of how to let the best players stay involved. Yeah, we're improv with a theme. Hawkeye, I'll tell you what I think about. I'm going to talk about Sandbox in a second. CabinCon 2020 was a cabin trip with 6 friends and a dog. We had Friday tacos and played games. Then Saturday was breakfast in the sun, liquor store run, ice cream orgy, swimming, games, grilling, booze, and more games till 4 a.m. Sunday went to getting up late and cleaning up and sending people up. Takadosh, that sounds amazing. CabinCon sounds super fun. I want a CabinCon. That's what I want. From there, depending on what they're doing and how they interact, you breadcrumb towards a bigger story, which you may or may not have planned. If gymming felt like a job, I probably would quit. Well, I mean, it is a job for some people. I don't see anything because I have no connection to TTRPG Twitter except when Adelaide rants about something. It's fair. Yeah, I had a lot of fun last night. Duo improv was my favorite bit of forensics meet. Ooh. So for my case, I had them investigating a young dragon slowly smuggling goods out of their city. I had no plan for them ending up toe-to-toe with the god of chaos with an army of kobolds on their side, but after a year, here I am. I heard air quotes around advice. Oh, scabby neck. Oh, yes. Yes, there was. I want to bring my cat a good necromancer outside the adventure. Like, oh, interesting. Speaking of violence, I just remarked that Trooper clearly thinks there's a time for violence because he was totally on team kill this thing on Thursday. Oh, hey, half-hours tournament. Yeah, I feel like sometimes, it also depends on the sort of context. I understand why they did not decide to go into a battle with that thing, probably because they were not prepared. And so good on them. But like that thing is like sketch. Okay, so sandboxes. Before we start about sandboxes, half-hours tournament, there was a huge lore bomb that dropped at the end of the last episode, which I will not spoil for you, but it was like, oh my goodness, it was a big one. And you were like, that's all. It was one of those things where you're like, if people could have seen my face, like my face was all ridiculous. Yes, half-hours. It was a thing. There was a thing. I love that they left the cameras on long enough for the players to figure it out. Me too, and the players figured it out. Okay, so let me talk about sandboxes for a moment. I actually want to, I think I want to do a video on sandboxes at some point in time. By the way, I ordered the camera. The one that will make me allow, the one that was like the 1,000 follower goal, and the one that enabled us to go and the camera so I can make videos. So I ordered it. So okay, look. So sandboxes. So people tend to contrast sandboxes with railroads, and that is. I feel like the one thing that's unfair about that is that the word railroad tends to have a negative connotation, but I don't think that is fair. And I also don't think sandbox versus railroad is the best comparison, because I think there are a lot of different ways we can sort of think about this. So let's go with the railroad side for a moment. Well, I'm still pondering what's going on with that PS4 over there in the other room. I'm going to probably have to look at some point in time. So, and the thing is, when people think about that, because, all right, so to use, it's not necessarily good. So an old school D&D module, and I'm going to talk about like indie story games as well as like a bunch of different things, right? So if you have a module, modules are tricky because it depends on the kind of a module. In some ways, a classic dungeon is a sandbox. In some ways, a classic dungeon is a sandbox, but I would say a directionless sandbox. Okay. So in a game with narrative, let's say sort of like a traditional narrative game, there is a story arc, right? That is planned. And how that story arc plays out, how closely you adhere to that story sort of depends on the individual GM. But there is a beginning, middle, and end. So for example, a classic narrative would be your players learn somewhere near the beginning of the adventure in the first couple of sessions that there is an evil cult, and that evil cult is planning on gathering the 5 rods of MacGuffin to open up a portal to let forth the demon of chaos, and that's what the villains are planning to do. So the players then sort of work towards, over time, trying to build up so that they can then go and confront the cult and stop them from opening a portal to letting in the evil chaos god of doom. My necromancer has a hatred of undead and is a bit of a hedonist. He wants to enjoy life to the fullest, especially since Advance has Mortician. Oh, that's so cool. Linear dungeons with only one path are not sandboxes, but a dungeon like you'd see in Hero Quest that's like an actual place with rooms and fortress. Yeah. Not the rods of MacGuffin. Oh, it's always the rods of MacGuffin. And so like in that sort of a campaign, that campaign like has a beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is I mean, and it follows the classic hero's journey in many ways, right? You get the call to action, you either refuse it or you don't, and then you go on the journey to sort of do the thing, and then you have the big confrontation, huge climax, and then you end the story. And that, hey, for Los Santo, I got 3 boxes, basically 4 boxes done yesterday, which I was really proud of. I only have like 16 boxes left to unpack. I'm feeling so good. So the thing about a narrative, and there are modules that are very narrative driven where like you have that, but a lot of people will structure their campaigns in a narrative way. Let's say traditional. Because I think that sandboxes have narrative, but we'll say a traditional narrative way. Sandbox, there's a civil war and its influence spreads. Stoics try to pull you in, but the PCs decide to be pirates and avoid this war altogether. So what's really satisfying about a traditional narrative sort of game, and in many ways, many classic D&D, when people tell stories of classic D&D, they often are, a lot of that framework is a classic narrative. And you're in this village on the side A and side B is how you need to win the war. Like, and there has been placed where I as a GM has railroaded for the sake of the story. Other times I've let my players do their things and the way they want to do things. And it becomes this thing where in a good classic, like there's something very sad. I think one of the reasons why many people like your classic traditional narrative campaigns is because it's very clear what they need to do. Like it's like they don't, as a player in a traditional narrative storyline, you don't have the responsibility to do it yourself, right? You don't have to find adventure. The adventure is there for you. The stakes are high. It's very exciting. Probably your backstory is tied into it. Like there are all these, like it's a good narrative game is very exciting. There's a reason why a lot of people might associate that kind of railroad or traditional narrative with old like modules, but a lot of indie games are also about traditional narratives. They really are. Sometimes they allow the players to be part of that traditional narrative building process, but the thing itself is built around the idea of a traditional narrative with a beginning, rising action, climax, and denouement that has this sort of really clear sense of direction. Barentor says, you're presented with choices instead of creating choices for your character. Yeah, and if done well, then it is epic, right? And the thing about the railroad, or let's say the roller coaster of fun, is that it's like some players really like getting, like sitting into that railroad cart, the roller coaster cart, strapping themselves in and going on for the ride. Hey, Grinny. And they like, and what this means that as a GM, your job is to get them to the climax, right? So your job is to, I had a set up an adventure on it for a Mission Impossible style caper. The players went in disguise as FDA and health and safety agents. Oh, that's fun, right? And so like there's a real skill that I will tell you, and I can do it because I mean I run those things. I can do it. I think I'm actually pretty good at doing a rail style game. It's because I often have to do them for short term campaigns, but my joy is a sandbox. But I also know that most players don't like sandboxes. Not really. So I mean, because most players don't like sandboxes, I'm very good at giving rails, if that's what the players want. And sometimes teaching them how to be sandbox players so that I can like let them go over time. I'm working on turning an improv story arc I did for my Wednesday game into a one-shot module for RPG. Ooh, that sounds fun. My current pirate game is a sandbox. Most of us just live on board a ship, creating and resolving conflicts, with the GM tossing complications from time to time. Yeah. So we're going to get to what PH says. So with a really good traditional narrative sort of game, players know what they're doing. They know what they have to do. They know where they're going. And the GM's job is to get them there to the end. And good, and I will say when people say, "Oh man, we were on rails," what I think they tend to mean, in my opinion, is that the GM is not very good at running a roller coaster. If the GM is not good at running the roller coaster, then you don't feel good about it. Like if you can run a roller coaster really well, what you do is you sort of give the illusion of choice, because the players want the illusion, not necessarily, they don't actually want the full free choice. Trust me, I know this one. They want the illusion of choice. They want to feel like this was all their choice, but you still have to get them to the big fight on the top of Mount Doom at the end anyway, right? Like you just are, what the GM does is has a light touch and guides them towards the confrontation at Mount Doom, because that's where the story is going. You just have to get them there in a way that makes them feel like they went there themselves, like they're walking to Mordor, but all roads lead to Mordor, right? Like there are many roads, but all roads lead to Mordor. And when you do that well, the players feel empowered, but you still get the full traditional narrative experience. Rails usually means the players don't feel like they have any choice, though they don't have a lot of choices anyway. Yeah, I had a GM once tell me I can go left on that crossroad. There's nothing worse than being in a party that decides to ignore any hooks to the story to just end up milling around because no one will lead off in a direction. So you screw around doing nothing for a session or two till finally they will admit to the plot needed. Right. So basically, does your game have a plot? If your game has a plot, then there is a traditional narrative. Yeah, all Railroad for me is doing it poorly, but I'm probably more restrictive with the term than intended. Frodo bringing Drew the business in Mordor is not the Railroad. Just got here, but bags ready for Mordor. My game that I'm doing based on a classic Doctor Who story arc. I'm enjoying what the wizard, cleric, and sorcerer helped me create. Yeah. So I, for one, love Sandbox mains, Grinny. I'm a big fan of being thrown into a game with basic rails and then just going ham on with things. See, Grinny, if you like Sandbox, I'm not going to give you rails at all. Like, if you don't want, because I will tell you, there are a couple things that are not great, and that is a mix match between Sandbox and Railroad players and GMs, right? So if you have players who are Sandbox players who do not like plots and will just destroy them, you don't want them in a game with a traditional narrative, because they're not going to play. There's actually skill involved in being a good traditional narrative GM, and there's skill involved being a traditional narrative player. There's also skill involved in being a Sandbox GM, and there's skill involved in being a Sandbox player. And those are different skill sets for both. They're different skill sets for both. And so Hawkeye, you have a story arc, right? So when you have a story arc, that's putting you into a traditional narrative that's not necessarily Sandbox, because you have a story arc, and it's about getting people to sort of go through that. But there are player skills, and I feel like people do not appreciate the skill it takes to be a good traditional narrative arc player, or traditional Railroad player, right? Because you actually have to, there's oh, look, a story hook. Bait sure doesn't look appetizing, but it's etiquette to bite anyways. Right, it's about, a good, there's, you know what it's like? Do you know what it's like? I don't know if any of you have ever done social dance, like waltz or swing dancing or country two-stepping, things like that. In social dance, there are steps that you follow, right? And you can move around, but there's still steps that you follow. And being a lead is a skill, and being a follow is a skill. And to be a good follow is really difficult, to be able to follow the steps and to do it with flair, and to do it with style, and your own style, to sort of bring your own style into the steps. If you've ever seen somebody dance, swing dancing, they're following set steps, but they are able to bring in their own flair, their own style, to make it seem fun and exciting. So in a structured game like that, let's call it structured versus unstructured. Let's do that. In a structured game, there is a skill to be a player in a structured game, where you know how to pick up hooks, play with hooks, make it feel fresh. A lot of players, far from all, who say they don't want rails, but they just don't want to see them. That is true, Scabinak. They want you to woo them with the story. Yeah, that's true. I find in my experience as a Sandbox GM, most players actually want rails. They just want the rails to be disguised. That's what they want. They want the epic story. They want to be Frodo. They want that arc. That's what a lot of players really want. And there's a skill to be able to play in that style, and there's a skill to GM in that style. I'd say the biggest disadvantage of being a sandbox game is you've got to be ready to have a massive collection of loose threads that will not be pulled at. Javai says you got to be able to pick up and play the hooks well. It's true, because there's a skill at playing those hooks well. Life's a dance. You learn as you go. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. Like having machines to sell all the extra inventory all around the video gaming world, but the player ignoring them to hoard everything. That could be a thing, Volpez. And so I think that So I think it's really important to note that in my experience, most players like having a structured game. They enjoy the experience, and oftentimes that's what they want. They want the epic story. I mean, I think of a structured game more like a film, or yeah, right, like the film, and you get certain kind of you get certain, like it's very exciting. So I do, like, my preferred style, my most joy comes from a sandbox, and a sandbox tends to be a game that does not have a predetermined plot, right? So, like, there is no predetermined story arc. You don't know the beginning, middle, and end. You don't know the big climax. You don't know, those are not things that are known. There are different ways to do sandboxes, just like there are different ways to do structured games or sort of unstructured games. I don't like unstructured. There are different ways to do sandboxes. Also, except that everyone wants to be Frodo. Some of us don't want to be the central hero. This is true, Volpez. A lot of people do, but not everybody does. So in a sandbox, there are a couple different ways to do sandboxes. I've sort of thought of two kind of main different ways of doing it, of doing sandboxes, but it's fine. Since they were structured into a company, all the basic stuff was just provided. Basic equipment, a small ration of healing potions, and a base pay rate. I cut down on so much inventorying, and they never seemed to care. And they seemed to really like it even more when they got special gear. Yeah. But I keep being the dominant personality in my groups. You enjoy being something, that happens. Also, I really want to find out what's going on. By the way, I tested my PS4 yesterday. That's one of the things I did yesterday. I was like, I'm going to make sure my PS4 is all working. And then something weird. Anyway, so with a sandbox, you don't have a story arc. You don't have a pre-made story arc. You don't have that kind of plot. You're not making a film, right, with a big, strong beginning, middle, and end. I played a bunch that was a sandbox game in the sense that there were a bunch of GMs because it was a large group of people playing on Discord. There were so many different stories happening all at once. I just loved jumping in and doing whatever my orc barbarian wanted. It was mostly drinking and punching things, but whatever. So, so here we sort of think about so pitfalls of the traditional narrative arcs that some people may, like Grinny, may not want to actually follow any story. They might want to have a story. They may just want to actually just punch things and some players, these are the worst players to have in a traditional narrative game. You would rather have these players in a sandbox. Players who see hooks and rather than ignore them, destroy them, so that no one can have. So that no one can have any narrative. Come on in my house, come on. Come on in my house, come on. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Thank you for that host hooded ornament. Welcome in. Yeah, I know, it's a new home sound. And when they were on the airship traveling the galley, it had a cupboard that accessed a dimension of imps. They provided foodstuffs, so they didn't have to worry about supplies. Oh, no, some people don't like supply management. The other person, my GM friend, was there who destroyed the hooks and was very upset and didn't know how to fix it because it was my first game. Yeah, Scabbinac. Ooh, come on in my house, come on. Come on in my house, come on. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on in my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Thank Thank you for that, host Grinny. I ran a railroad game once. It was called Punch Nazis. The only winning move was to punch. Every time a player tried to do something other than punch, they failed. It took me a few pages. This is a forum play-by-post to figure it out. But once they did, the fun was gone, of course. It's. I think it's really tricky, right? Because there's a difference between. Because here's the thing: if you have 5 players and 4 of them are there for the narrative experience, and they all want to go on this grand journey where they start zeros, they end up heroes, and they defeat Mordred the Magnificent, and one player doesn't like story and actively ruins the story for everyone else, that is no good. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a terrible mismatch. And so you do not want sort of anti-story players in a story game, because they will just ruin it for everybody else if they're gonna be sort of jerks about it. So like that's and I've had and players who are like that. I'm sure you do. Like players who are like, oh, there's a quest giver, I murder them, and you're like, what? And they can sometimes be chaos monkeys, right? Where they're often not necessarily the greatest for sandbox games either, because all they want to do is just ruin things. Like they just want to like. And they will often do things that make no sense in character or in the world. They're like, you walk into the village and, you see your mother. I kill my mother. Oh, okay. You go to the village. I burn the village. Okay. Like they just want to watch the world burn. And those players are not good for structured or for sandbox, to be honest. But there are players who that's really what they want to do. They just want to burn everything. That is their fun breaking stuff. Sadly, I think there's a trend in some circles to encourage that kind of play. Like that is what you're supposed to do. Yeah, Javai, that is true. And the thing is, I've had groups that would spend entire 3 gaming sessions doing inventory management. I avoid it when possible. Some people like it, and for those players that they ban, for me, those players are okay for murder hobos. See, and Krell is right there. Like that particular style where they like the chaos monkeys, those people, you just give them a dungeon, right? Like you give them a dungeon, or like if I have players, like if I ended up having a strong group of players like that, like a group where that was the core group of those players, hey, W. Carter H. I can see if it works with the character narrative, but I don't see it for the point of otherwise. But I'm also story driven, yeah. If those players with the giant immortal guards real quick. But see, the thing is, that's not... Giving them the giant immortal guards isn't actually fair to them either, because they actually do want an experience. What they want is chaos, mayhem, and murder. That's what they want. They want murder, chaos, mayhem, and no consequences. And if those are your players, if you have like 4 players and that's what they want, then you should do your best as a GM to give it to them or not GM them. And I have had those players before, and so and I gave them a very good game. Like I understood real quick that what they wanted was to just punch people and murder things with no consequences really, or they only kind of want cinematic consequences. They kind of want like GTA consequences, but not level 5, where like people get mad at them and that gives them more excuse to like murder people. They want some guards to come after them so they can then murder the guards. Like they want to feel super badass murdery. And you can give them that game. That's a game that I would give them. They want the chase. They don't want to end up in jail. Yeah. They want, they want, and oftentimes, like Grinny, they're like, I died, whatever. Oftentimes they actually don't care if their character dies. They just kind of want the mayhem. With those players, I give them a good dungeon crawl. I feel like a good murder hobo dungeon crawl is really good for those players. Or like a post-apocalyptic zombie thing is pretty good for those players. Any kind of game that allows them to just run around murdering people with few consequences and is going to be pretty good for them. But you have to make that game for them if those are the players, right? And that is a kind of a sandbox often, right? Because there is no point other than just sort of like murdering things and getting stuff. And like they can like we have like if there are other things that are kind of on the side, they're not that important. They're just sort of like a little bit of window dressing, and you can totally like. And those campaigns are I mean, for me, that's a one shot. Like. I will do that for a one-shot as a GM, but I don't tend to want to do that for a year. I don't want to do like a 2-year campaign where that's what happens for 2 years every week. it is not my preferred jamming style. I can do it, and I will do it for a one shot. Now I will also, I mean, I'm planning on running an arena, which is just punching people. That's all it is. That's all that's going to be. So like, I mean, I can do those things, but I will just say that like that is a style of play, not a great style of play for a structured narrative game, right? Is what I would note. One of our players got caught by a dragon. He tried plugging his load to it. It threw him down an actor. He nearly drowned. Oof. There's nothing worse than being another player in a group with that player. Yeah. So I felt your depression at 2 years jamming. Scabby Neck, Levi. I gotta tell you, like that was not my joy. Like it's really hard when you. And the thing is, like it's a very different style of jamming, right? If you're gonna jam for people whose whole fun is ruining everything, you have to approach that as a jam in a very different way. There are just systems I wouldn't use for that. I also chose to break a crystal that resulted in crying crystal monsters coming out and killing 3 of my friends. Thankfully, one stayed dead. The rest came back with arms missing. Well, yeah, you want the Chaos Monkeys all to be together because one Chaos Monkey isn't very fun for everyone. Yes. So, like, all the Chaos Monkeys together is usually really great. Now, there are Chaos Monkeys who are considerate Chaos Monkeys who like to inject a little bit of chaos, but they don't break things. Like, there are Chaos Monkeys that like to, like, mix things up but won't break things, and there are Chaos Monkeys that want to break things. The Chaos Monkeys want to break things, you want to put them all in the same campaign. And the thing is, there is this idea that GMs should just basically play with, like, I really think Dan, I am talking, like, Dan is a little bit of a Chaos Monkey, but he doesn't break things, so he can be fun, right? Because he doesn't break things, he throws in a little bit of chaos. He's the mix it up sort. He'll mix it up, but he doesn't break things, so because he's sort of considerate of like the table vibe. But if you have Chaos Monkeys, they just like want to break things, then you need to make things to be broken. And I feel like there are some systems that are better than other systems for that. What I mean by that is, if I had real Chaos Monkeys, I would not put them in GURPS. Because GURPS takes a little bit too much care. Like, you spend time making your character. Like there's a bit more crafting in GURPS. So when you spend time crafting both characters and setup, then to have somebody who just wants to break stuff, that's just like, that's no fun. So if I had people who just wanted to break stuff, I would run it a different system. I would run it a system where characters are fast and cheap, where setup is fast and cheap, where, like, it's like I wouldn't build a 3-dimensional it's like for Game of Thrones, they actually built a lot of 3-dimensional, fully functional stuff because they wanted it to last and be rugged and fit. But other places, you just need two-dimensional backdrops. Like, if people just want to wreck things, you don't build a whole castle. You just make backdrops that they can just rip through, right? Because they just want to rip through stuff, and that is fine. They do silly things wherever they can, but they don't ruin the narrative, like in design and characters. Yeah. Yet a player in a game I was in that whispered to an NPC that he had been charmed after our party left, creating a chase. Hated it. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Here's what's up. We're gonna I think, you know what we're gonna do? Give me a second, will you? This is what's gonna happen right now. I'm gonna check to see what's going on with that PS4, and if the PS4 is making any sense, I'm gonna come back and then shoot things while we chat. If not, then what I'm gonna do is just change our title to RPG Talk. I'm gonna just see what's going on over there. I'm just gonna see. Give me a second. Also, I'm wearing shorts. Like, it's very dramatic. I'm not gonna go to be right back. I'll be right back. Be right back. Hold on. PS4. I need my controller. Hold on. I need my controller. And my cable. That's weird. I'm back. My PS4 is being weird. It's being strange. I don't like it. It's being weird. Hey everybody. So we're gonna change the title because my PS4 is being weird. We're gonna change the title to RPG Talk because I don't know what it's doing right now. Like it's being very strange. Let's see. Change title. Edit stream info.
Somebody's watching me.
I always feel that somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Whoa, I always feel that somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? Welcome for the follow, Unstable Deus. It says we were going to do PS4 gaming, but I'm changing the title to Trooper Talks RPGs. Because right now, my PS4 is being really weird. Railroad versus Sandbox. And let's just change this. Player and GM styles. Oh, I have to tell you all something else. There's something you should probably know. Should we put this under just chatting? Or we'll just put this under just chatting. Oh, thank you. The echo making it sounds like let's do this. Done. Okay. So my stream information has been updated. We put ourselves into just chatting. I hope it'll be all right. All right. What did I miss? Let's see. Oh, PH wanted some explanation about Hawkeye's thing about the charm. I'm back. No, wait. I am. I almost never wear shorts, but it's so hot outside. It's like 90 degrees. I'm wearing shorts. It's crazy. I know there was a knee. I'm so sorry. No, I'm back. Troopers low his leg. Jimmy did. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Thank you for the host, for Lasanto. That was very exciting. Thank you. So where are we at? Let's see. I had one murder. This is Volpe, Varum Lumen. I had one murder hobo chaos monkey in a group with a real life rage problem. It was the pits. Ooh. Lamp has a bright future. But I want to control so I can zoom in on the board game shelf. Oh, see, that would be nice. It's hot. Let's see. Let's see. I want to know what the two above the Mountains of Madness with two figures on each box are. Oh, I can tell you that. That's fine. Don't immediately recognize them. I will tell you. Vulpes, I will tell you. Doesn't like New York. They didn't say no game today. I don't know what's up with it. Like it's like I tried to like get access to my PS4 and it was just sort of like frozen. So I don't know what's up with that. It seemed frozen in a not good way. So I'm gonna just, check that out after the stream is over. Hawkeye says, one of our group successfully charmed a local boss and got the information we needed, and we were able to leave without incident. That was the plan. This other player used message to tell me he'd been charmed. The boss sends his men after us, and we wasted 30 minutes fighting them off rather than enjoying the story. Was told he was notorious for doing crap like that. Ooh, ouch. How are the neighbors? So I only have one neighbor, a downstairs neighbor named Ernestine, and she seems very nice. I hope that I don't bother her. Trooper's saying, what I miss makes me think of Davy Diggs singing. Oh, yeah. Candy is nice. Does it come with a suspicious looking van? For Losanto, yes. Yes, it does. It comes with a really 70s looking van with like airbrush. Yeah, it's a VW van. Mm-hmm. How old's my PS4? I mean, it's not that old. I mean, it's not like it's new. It's not like a PS Pro or anything like that, but it's not that old. It's just a little mysterious to me what's going on with that. So I'm gonna investigate. Okay, so I wanted to actually get to sandboxing and like a sandbox campaign. So a sandbox campaign does not have a predetermined arc. And it doesn't. That would be the one thing that really sort of makes a sandbox campaign. And one of the things that really distinguishes a sandbox campaign is that the players can do whatever they want. It's their choice what they do, where they go, for the most part, like how they do things. Now, the thing about, and there are different ways to do a sandbox, and I think the ways that when people think about sandboxes typically, I think what they think about is an open world video game. So can you have an established campaign in a sandbox world? Yes, I tend to GM sandbox, so you certainly can. So I think when people think about, hey, Artie Snack, things are going well. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I feel pretty good actually about where I'm at in terms of unpacking. Okay, so one of the problems with so when people think about sandboxes, they often will think about totally open world video games like Minecraft or right, friends, Mom and I are going to pick up something from a stranger. If you're gone when I return, know that I love you. Grinny, is this stranger safe? Are you going to be okay? Do we need to send a goon squad with you to protect you? Will you check in with us? Just check in with us. I mean, you're going to go see a stranger. Like, are you going to pick up like a jar of eyes? Like, what's going on, Grinny? Be safe. What about the world having a relatively set narrative for the world, but not the players? Is that sandbox or narrative? Yeah, Crown's on the Brute Squad. We will... don't do drugs. Well, don't do my drugs. I think the campaign ring is essentially a sandbox. If I don't come back, also know that I love you. Grinny! Grinny, check in with us when you come back. Check in with us. Grinny, do you have somebody who knows where you're going? Like, just be safe. Be safe. I'm going to answer that question, Javai. We can think about this. So I think that when people think about a classic sandbox, right, they think about, like a Minecraft or maybe something like Fallout, where you're just let loose in the world, right? You're just let loose in the world. As my sister-in-law from Australia says, be good or be good at it or don't get caught. Yes. Just remember, throw them your mom. You can run faster than her. What if her mom's an Olympic sprinter, though? I'm just saying, we don't know how fast Granny's mom is. That's all. These are things we don't know. So, in that way of you're such a big brother in the best ways. I am. It's true. Ooh, I had a fan somewhere. So in that video game space, you just there's like a world that has stuff in it, and then players just kind of wander around that world and find stuff and do things, and they do whatever they want. And like there are dungeons that are like that, where like there's a dungeon, there's stuff in the dungeon, you just go and you decide what room you want to go in, you just do your thing. Ooh, the name game. Come on, everybody. I said, now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name, I treat it like it wasn't there. And then a B or an F or an M will appear. And then I say bo at a B, then I say the name, then banana, fan, or info. And then I say the name again with an F, very plain, then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can't rhyme. D-Beachy, 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 Bo-Be Beachy, Banana, Fana, Fofi Beachy, Fee, Fi, Mo-Be Beachy. D-Beachy. Thank you for that resub, D-Beachy. Also, Atomica has sent us some bits, and that means I'm going to sing the song We're in the Money, as sung by Ginger Rogers in the film Gold Diggers of 1933, which means I'm going to sing in Pig Latin. My megaphone is still somewhere in one of these boxes, and I need to find the box with my megaphone so that I can unpack it. I have a suspicion about which one of the boxes it is in, because I only have 7 medium-sized boxes. Everything else is small, and so it has to be one of those medium boxes, and I'm going to get that megaphone. I'm going to get it so I can sing with my megaphone again, because I love my megaphone. But... Earway and hey, the anime. Earway and hey, the anime. Eve way at gale at way up way at way at wakes to take gale on will. Earway and hey, the anime. Either I skates or ani say. Oh man, did he ash and pray. Ooh, yare, ooh, three, you was stay on way on rail. Ewe every eat red lands lay, ev red brands lay, today. And we see the end, the order will look at the eye, get in the eye. We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. I just want to sing that song. I'm so excited. So excited. Thinking like the game takes place in a Lord of the Rings during the events of the movies, but the party just explores or something. So they can do whatever, but the movie is still happening even if they aren't looking. Shavai, I will get there. Wait, what? There's a megaphone in a box. I'm gonna have to get that megaphone. I don't think the world in games like that is living in the sense that it happens regardless of what the players do, and that isn't a hope. And you got a cat here. But I don't think the world in games like that is living in the sense that things happen regardless of what the players do. And isn't that a hallmark of a sandbox game? The world's alive. Artie Snack, there are 2 different ways of doing the sandbox, right? There's like the living sandbox, and then there's the less living sandbox. And I think so for me, the way I think about it is the difference between location-based sandbox or timeline-based sandbox. So there are location-based sandboxes, and location-based sandboxes are things like dungeons, like big mega dungeons. Not all dungeons, some dungeons are linear, but a lot of mega dungeons are basically location-based sandboxes where it doesn't matter how long they spend in that dungeon. Room 7 is still going to have 5 kobolds. Level 2, room 3 is still going to have an orc and a pit trap or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, the dungeon itself is pretty static. You can just go through it however you want. Maybe you're thinking of simulationists rather than, well, you can do, but you can do that though, Artie. And there are people who I think of are being as like, and the monsters never do anything until the players arrive. Yeah. And that there is a way to do a sandbox that's really location based. And actually some of the video games are like that, right? Where they create the thing, you've got all the different places. And I will say there are GMs who really like world crafting and they just want to make this sort of thing and they build all the places and then they just want you to explore all the places and go to the places. No, take candle. And that's like that's kind of like an exploratory sandbox where the point is to explore the location, like to explore all the places. And that is a style of sandbox. I don't tend to do that myself as much because my great fun is not in world, like my personal great fun is not in world building, it's in ripples. So then there's the so not only did you only pack the essentials, not only was a freaking megaphone part of the essentials, but also you go right for the megaphone. Well, I mean, the megaphone is an essential, right? Don't you think? I feel like a megaphone is an essential, right? That's all I'm saying. But then there's another style of sandbox game, which is the kind that I do, where the Space Ghost Cruise isn't an undead sandbox on an asteroid. Oh, nice. So what I do for my sandboxes, I like to do timeline sandboxes or living sandboxes wherein and so for me, it's not necessarily about like I have done some more location-based sandboxes, but a lot of them are not exploration sandboxes. They're timeline sandboxes. So, for example, City of Light and Shadow is not an exploratory sandbox. It's not like I just dropped you in the world, go explore the entire universe if you want to. They're basically in Paris. They can go outside of Paris if they want to, but like it's based in Paris, so it's not about exploring the entire world. Instead, what I do in a living sandbox or a timeline sandbox, so rather than being this, it's this. This is like exploring, this is sort of directional. Like I call it like a directional sandbox where there's a world. The world does not have a narrative. People in the world have plans. So, for example, Falke, who was the head of German intelligence in Paris, he had a plan. He had things that he wanted to do. Tristan Hassel, who's the head of the Gestapo in Paris, he has plans. He has things that he wants to do. The serial killer had plans and had things that he wanted to do. The various actors, right? There are different resistance cells in Paris, and they have things that they are wanting to do. They have plans. The various people all have plans that they want to do in their life. And when the players do not interact with them, they still move forward, right? They still continue on doing their plans. So what about games like Elder Scrolls or Assassin's Creed, which are considered sandbox, but also has a narrative and end game? This is actually very interesting because I think Assassin's Creed is a little bit different from Elder Scrolls, depending on how you do it. Or I think, or even something like Mass Effect is a really good example of this kind of weird hybrid. Kind of like Dragon Age 2 with dealt with changes over time changes over time rather than location. Definitely. Artie Snack. Definitely. I've met too many gamers who have never explored the end game of... Yeah, so that's the thing. Elder Scrolls is a little bit different than I think... I think Elder Scrolls is different than Mass Effect or Dragon Age because... in Mass Effect, they're going to lock you into the end game. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a point in time where you get locked into the end game. And it's not really like, they're not really sandbox. Like what they are narrative games that pretend to be sandbox games. Although Inquisition had a bit more actual sandbox to it. But I think one of the reasons why Mass Effect and Dragon Age do well is because they look like they're sandbox games, but they're narrative games, right? They're not actually sandbox games. Same with Fallout. There's a story, but you could ignore it and go off and explore whatever. Yeah, Skyrim, Morrowind, and this actually we'll get to one of the problems with a sandbox, and this is interesting, right? Because Morrowind, especially. But also Oblivion. The things that world does not progress until you follow the narrative. I think there's a difference between a computer sandbox and a TTRP sandbox as a result of the differences in the media. The thing is, Javai, what's interesting is I think a lot of people port their video game experiences into RPGs, and they think that's what an RPG sandbox is, but I don't necessarily think so. That's why I like Skyrim, how I can do things when I want. Yeah. Industry and majority would disagree that it isn't a sandbox. Which one, Jer? Which one? Mass Effect? I actually think that it's not a sandbox exactly. I think that, especially when you look at something like, take a look at KOTOR, right? People are like, oh, sandbox. But KOTOR was like, you start in planet A, you go to planet B, you start in, it's like, it's pretty linear, right? Like you start, in KOTOR, you start off in that first place, you crash land on Telos, I think it was, and then then they take you to Elder Scrolls totally a sandbox. Like in KOTOR, you start in this one planet, like you crash land on Telos, they take you to Dantooine, where you get your Jedi stuff. And then they're like, there are 4 places you can go to these 4 places in whichever order you want. And then after you go to the 4 places, you go to Endgame, right? So having 4 different planets you can go to in whichever order makes it seem sandboxy, but it's really not, right? They just are like, it's linear. It just doesn't, it pretends like it's not linear. That's fine. They take you to Funky Town. They take you to Funky Town. Going one place and picking from 3 places in any order, then going to 5 places is not a sandbox. See, this is what I would say, Krone. It's just that they sort of make it feel like a sandbox, but it's, whereas with Skyrim, like I know people who played Morrowind and never did the plot, and they never had to. Like you just don't have to, and you don't, right? And of course, what's interesting about those is that they're not necessarily living, because the world doesn't grow and change really. Like, you know, I've only played Origins for AC, which was pretty sandbox. Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of video games are going to put a narrative over it in the end anyway, because kind of people want that. Although not all of them do. Like, MMOs are pretty sandboxy. Yeah. Volus Dude says, some of us can agree that Burnin' Bush and Moses wasn't the ideal combination of Jim and player. Bush, you are leading your people to the promised land. Moses, I gotta get lost in the desert 40 years. Bush, why? Why? Volus, yes. So Forless Hunter says, I'm playing in a game where there's an internal meme about fantasy shopping, a role-playing game. But as a GM, if my players want a game about shopping and trading, then I'm going to do my best to provide that. Hey, Anino Gaming, we're talking about different gaming styles right now, and we're talking about sandboxing at the moment. Yeah, and actually, I have no worries. If my players want to go shopping, I will do that. So I think in a sandbox, you don't have a predetermined arc. There's no big overarching plot. In the way that I do sandboxes, my NPCs have plots, and they have goals, and they have timelines, and sometimes nations might have plots. and if the players don't do anything, the world is going to progress, which does mean that, and this is a thing about sandboxes that are, let's call them directional sandboxes, directed sandboxes, or timeline sandboxes, is that there are plots that the players may never get to. And this is actually, like, theoretically a thing that some people would disagree on. Some people don't think that that's appropriate. They like, I mean, this is like, it's really interesting to think what is the world that you're creating? What is it? We'll have to grind for 40 years to be strong enough to defeat the Pharaoh. Of course, Vulpes, that makes sense. Krellin says, in my Dark Heresy game, we'd really love to go shopping, but we're all broke. Fair. Ooh, tea. Yes. I've met more than one player that just wants to get on with the story, and me as the GM to provide the progress. Yes, Baron Tor, there are a lot of players who that's what they want. And in a directed so this is the thing, right? Let's think about sort of like on a kind of like a big meta level. Yeah, MMOs are more gated by level. You can go to other places, but you'll just die. Yeah, and some you can just, there was A Tale in the Desert was just completely sandbox, where they just dropped you off in the desert with nothing in ancient Egypt. And I don't know, you're just going to do what you're going to do. And the thing is about, and so for me, I find two things. Exploratory sandboxes where the world doesn't necessarily live. It is there for you to come upon, and then things happen when you get there. I was going to say this sort of theoretical thing. If you make, some people think, and this is a completely valid way of thinking, that the world you create is created for the PCs, right? That you should not be, as a GM, making things the PCs are not going to be interacting with. So, for example, that it's just too much work, but also it's not about you as the GM. Like, it's about these things. Right. Baron Tor says no big events off camera, right? That everything is supposed to be there for the players to interact with. So and that certainly happens in like narrative things. And if in a traditional narrative story, if a big events happen off camera, it happens off camera for a reason that has to do with like advancing the narrative for the players. And in an exploratory sort of sandbox where those goblins are going to be in room 7 no matter what, it's like that. You don't have things are there for the players. Things are for the players. You don't create the things not for them. The things are for them. So the things wait until they get there. I like to do the timeline sandboxes where there might be a plot hook, but if they don't take it, it may be gone by the time they get back to it, right? Like if they there's like that opportunity may be gone because the world continues moving even in the absence of their activity, which doesn't mean that I have a plan. Like, doesn't mean that I have a plot as a GM, but just like that, what I do as a GM is tick the world forward and think, okay, well, they did this, what happens? These are the consequences. Here's some other people in the world. What are they doing right now? Okay, and they move forward. And so like, I'm always thinking about, so for me, in a directed sandbox, or a timeline sandbox, rather than exploring this way, I'm sort of exploring, like, rather than exploring place, I'm exploring time. Like, how does a world change over time in response to player action or inaction, right? So for me, my sandbox that I enjoy, the style that I like, is we'll call a timeline sandbox, where things are happening in the world. I don't have a plan, but things are happening in the world, and then what is being explored is not location, but time, like how time changes. But in making a world for my fantasy RPG games, having events happen off camera that has led to story space to be explored later, maybe not by that group, but by others. See, now this is the interesting thing, Red Kite. I enjoy that personally. Like, I like that, but there are people who think that's actually bad storytelling. I like to not be judgy about it. But some people are like, some people would call it, I'm going to use a word, would call it basically GM masturbation, that GMs should not be just doing all that on, like, what are you doing? Like, that's like your job is to entertain the players, and doing all this stuff that the players are never going to be involved with. There are a lot of people who look down on that and don't think it's good. It is what I like to do. So like, I'm never bothered by that because I actually enjoy it. Like, it's fine for me. The merchant in the inn will hire you as a caravan guard. Players go off and do something else for a week. Okay, let's go see that merchant meet. He's gone already. Right, Barantor, that's what I would do. Right, for me, I would say he's gone already because I really enjoy a timeline sandbox. Some people don't like it. Some people don't think it's fair. So you have to make sure you have to match the players with the style. But I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. It makes me really excited. Mine might also depend on how much I have the capacity to plan for other things. I might have things wait for the players or just have the world run. Yeah, I mean, and you can also sort of play with that. Some things may not be set in motion, so you can hold them off for a while. So now, here's the thing about sandboxes. Right, my preferred style, I love a good directed sandbox. But Commander Pulsar says, I often have things happen off camera to give the impression that the world lives outside of the party. Otherwise, it seems like a video game where events just hang fire until you're done with all your side quests to move the main plot forward, particularly as a consequence of player choices. Yeah, then the thing is, Commander Pulsar, there are players that really like that experience, though, right? You know, I mean, there are players who really like to feel like they are the center of the world and the world revolves around them, especially power gamers. They love that, and that's the experience they want. I don't love that, so that's not the experience that I want. So I don't tend to do it unless I know that I have players who really want that, and then I will accommodate. But I because I like what I like, I love what I love. I try to find players who will like that style, so that then I can really do it. For Losanto says, one thing I found difficult as a player, I want my character to have connection to the world. When I come to a town, I want to meet the inhabitants, get involved in their narrative, and have ongoing relationships. When it's okay, you're in town, anything you want to do, then there aren't any hooks presented for me to connect my character to. Right. Okay. So here's what I want to talk about in terms of also in these, there wouldn't really be a main story, would there? There would not. Well, Artie Snack, we have to be philosophical about what main story is, right? So people who are into narrative games would say there's no main story in this game, and that's why it is not fun. I actually have a different position on that. I disagree with the idea that there's no main story, which I will get to. But like, if you are in a kind of a narrative style, you're going to think there's no main story, and you're going to be like, what's going on? I have a different idea about that, which I will get to. I love it too, but sandbox players can be rare. Yeah. Although you can cultivate sandbox players, you can. Current campaign, the PCs haven't ever stopped moving before more than a couple days. If when they do stop, there are some people who really want to talk to them who will catch up, yeah. Coming to town should not be the same as opening the shop screen. So here's the problem with sandboxes. And I can tell you some of the things that I do to help mitigate that, and also to help cultivate sandbox players. Just as I said that there are skill sets to be a good narrative player, there are also skill sets to be a good sandbox player. And I find that a lot of players do not have the skills to be a good sandbox player yet. They have not developed them, especially if they're used to playing really module heavy games. Like if they're used to only playing really narrative focused or linear games, they've not developed the skills to flourish in a sandbox, and so you have to teach them. You have to teach them those skills. Trooper, now I want to share with you just telling us your ideas to cultivate sandboxes. Well, this is sort of our stream right now. We're talking about sandboxes, and I'm gonna do some videos on it. A group goes to rescue someone from a tower or whatever, and the person already rescued themselves and is renting the tower as a B&B. Hey, that is this Artie Stack. The trick to playing in a sandbox is to bring your own shovel and bucket. Yes, PH. But if you do not know that you need to bring a shovel and bucket, and you don't know how to use the shovel and bucket, then that sandbox is going to be very, very unsatisfying. So some of these things are philosophical, right? But one thing is, if as a player, like players have developed, I find the average player has developed the skills to recognize hooks, bite in an interesting and creative and individual way, like really good narrative players. And actually, I mean, I will tell you, really good narrative players have great skills. They not only do they know how to recognize hooks and then bite them and then play with them and use them and develop them and improvise around them in really sort of creative ways without sort of ruining the overall narrative. They also know how to play into that story. They know how to yes and that story. They know how to follow along that plot and make the plot more epic. Like, there's a whole skill set into following a plot really well. And there is a skill set in doing a sandbox well, but those are not skills that people tend to learn. And many game systems also do not help mechanically. So let me tell you what the pitfalls are with sandboxes before I get into the other thing. So one of the pitfalls is, especially if you're doing an exploratory sandbox, you say, it's like, here is, I would say, not a great recipe for success unless you have really good sandbox players. If you have really good sandbox players, you are golden. But I would say like 201 sandbox players, not 101, or maybe even like 401 sandbox players. Do I do song requests? Hey, Kopkalal, 1, 2, 3. The problem with songs, I don't do song requests because Twitch is banning people for playing music on their channels. And a bunch of bans were coming down, and I do not want to have my channel banned because of the RIAA bringing a hammer down. I used to do like little song clips for my alerts, but I got rid of those as well because we're not in a good spot right now when it comes to songs and Twitch, which is very disconcerting. It upsets me, Kopka. It upsets me very much. It really does. The name game. Come on, everybody. I said, now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name, I treat it like it wasn't there. And then a B or an F or an M will appear. And then I say bo at a B, then I say the name, then banana, fana, and fo. And then I say the name again with an F very plain, then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can rhyme. And Bar Garwin, and Bar Garwin, Bar Garwin, Bar Garwin, banana, fana, fo, Bar Garwin, fee, fi, mama, Bar Garwin, and Bar Garwin, and Bar Garwin, your name, and Bar Garwin. Does a sandbox game work better with a more flexible set of mechanics? I know, I'm just talking, hey, Anino Gaming, whenever somebody subscribes to the channel, I sing them the name game with their name. That's what I do. Yeah, they're very echoey. I have got a sound dampening blanket, which I'm going to hang up on this wall over here that you cannot see, which is right in front of me. But I need to get command strips first because I can't hammer onto this wall because I think the apartment would kill me. So I'm waiting to get the command strips so that I can put up this sound dampening curtain to sort of reduce the echo. And then I'm probably going to try to get a rug. So I'm working on the echoings. I'm working on it. Yeah, choosing the right game. So here's what I think is least likely to be successful. Although if you could hammer if you don't value your security deposit. Oh, Anino Gaming. This is true. Trooper has a plan to defeat the Echo, but because he's in a sandbox campaign, there wasn't a command strip vendor across the street. No, there wasn't. This is fair. This is fair, Scabby Neck. So I would think like the is it even better? Oh, thanks. Yeah, but once I put the sound out, it'll deaden everything. All right, so there is a style of sandbox, and that style of sandbox is exploratory one where where everything is completely open, right? Where everything is completely open, and you say to the players, hey, players, we're going to play a big Sandbox campaign. It's going to be set, let's do it, let's say post-apocalypse. Make a character and then do whatever you want. So players make their characters, maybe not even talking to each other. They just make a character they want to make. And then you say, okay, you start. You're at the edge of a small town in the wastelands. Go. And that particular kind of sandbox is just completely open for the players to do whatever they want. And that'd be like, sort of like, I suppose, Minecraft, right? And most players, in my experience, do not do well with that. And that campaign is not going to go well. Most of the time. There are players for whom, since we're not going to put this game, I'm going to put my chat right here. There we go. I'm going to put my chat right there. One character wants to build a well, one character wants to start a gang, one wants to start a racing circuit, and the last one wants to be an archaeologist. As a player, that sounds great, but I can get analysis paralysis, yeah. Sal says, the trouble with Sandbox games, I think, is the lack of direction to show the players forward. It's why most Sandbox video games have, a main story. And oftentimes, then they're not actually that. And oftentimes, many Sandbox video games are not actually Sandbox video games. Now, I won't deal with that setup, Tripper, because you did not give me even the 10th as much backstory as I need to make a directed character for that. Right. See, that's the thing. And that is not how I do my sandboxes. And there is a style of sandbox. There's a style of player who wants that. I find they're very rare. But there are players where that is actually what they want. And that is all that they want. You can give them some backstory where you say, well, there was an apocalypse and and you kind of give them the setup. But see, PH is like, yeah, I would need at least one theme or goal. There are players who don't want any themes or any goals. I missed the serious mathematic level mustache curls. Yeah, they're still in there. You can't see them very much though. Tell me about the apocalypse. And sure, and I can, it can give you all the backstory. The apocalypse happened 15 years ago when we reached peak oil, or whatever you want to do it, right? And you can sort of give them the setup, but there are people who want no direction and no guidance at all. They want to know what the world is, and that's it. They don't want any constraints on their players. I just got hoisted on my own petard. Though I do know that saying the apocalypse is Fallout does provide a lot more background. Sure, you could just say it's Fallout, right? Wait, why is this an RPG and why I'm just reading a setting book? Because then you get to do what you want. And they're players, right? That's what they want. They're like, okay, we're going to, this is set in Fallout. We'll say, it's set in Fallout, or, The Last of Us universe. Go, do what you want. And there are players, that is exactly what they want. They want no constraints on making their character. They want to make whatever character they want with no constraints, and they want to do whatever they want with no constraints. And then they want to be sort of put in a world, and then they want to do what they want to do. They want to, and as PH says, maybe one wants to build a well, one wants to be an archaeologist, one wants to be a gang leader, and then as a GM, what you do is you just have to manage all those players doing all their stuff. And that is, if only they could write a book. And that style of sandbox, which is not my personal style of sandbox, can be super rewarding for the players. Like players who really like that from the get-go, they love that. Like, because they do whatever they want. I find that particularly hard as so one of my main quest givers was the god of poison. They're fighting the god of chaos. I forgot that one of my players saved a vial of the poison god's blood for a special occasion. There you go. The Last of Us 2 is very much not a sandbox. It was an interactive novel. Oh, I haven't played Last of Us 2. Interesting. And there are players who want to play, it's like I don't know if you know, the perfect example of this would be EVE Online. Jared's like, I don't see how that can be rewarding for a GM. I would say that there are GMs who really enjoy seeing what players build, right? And the thing is, with that kind of sandbox, completely open in that way, it allows players to build their own things. Like, it's like an EVE Online or maybe Minecraft. Like, you get to build whatever you want, and that can be really satisfying for players who want no constraints and to be able to do whatever they want. However, I find most players don't want that. One of the reasons I like Fate is that the players are involved in the world building. They get to build the things their characters are interested into the world. That is true. Although you don't have to run Fate that way, and I kind of don't. I run Fate a lot more traditional than Fate is supposed to be run, which is as you do. And I think, but for that kind of sandbox to work, I know I'm playing Fate wrong. I know it. You need players who are really internally motivated and who want to do their own thing, and who want to build their own thing. And they want to explore the world that GM has provided. They want to explore the Fallout universe. They want to see if they can become a warlord or become an like, they want to do their own thing, whatever it is they want to do. And if they get to do it, it can be very satisfying. And I think that there are GMs for whom they would enjoy seeing what their players do. That isn't how I tend to run my sandboxes, because I tend to find that that kind of player is actually quite hard to find, and also that is not my optimal fun. I think I'm wondering how the mechanics of the system affect the choices you can make in a sandbox. Every system I've looked at seems to work well for certain actions but falls on others, i.e. what skill encompasses the creation of a nuclear weapon and how does one get skill points for it? Oh, Unstable Dios, my preferred system is GURPS, and you can do whatever you want in GURPS. Like, hello, say Spider Mix. Yeah, like, if you want to make a nuclear weapon, you can do that in GURPS. It's fine. Like, there are systems that will enable you to do basically whatever you want, and so that is there. But of course, what system you make will constrain. Like, doing a full sandbox in D&D is going to give you a very different experience than if you do a full sandbox in GURPS. Right? Some players are more goal-oriented and want to see what the goalposts are instead of creating them for themselves. Right? This is fair. See, Spider, I see you. If you're creating nuclear weapons in Fallout, you're playing it wrong. I'm looking at you, Fallout 76. So I find that players, generally speaking, what I'm going to tell you is, in my experience, most players are never actually given agency. Not real agency for the most part, and so they're not used to experiencing agency. And if you're not used to experiencing agency, you are going to have a hard time with sandbox games. So I find you have to let players know that they have agency. You have to teach them that they have agency, which is a weird thing to say, but it is true. And I see you. And then what I would say, in terms of sort of thinking about what I do with the sandbox, is that I actually put a lot of constraints on my sandbox to start, so that nobody plays or likes GURPS. They all just pretend to. First time experiencing ancient games is down. It is. This is the thing, is that most games don't give you agency, and you they don't. Not really. A lot of games really just don't give you a lot of agency. And I mean that from the very beginning. You take, gotta put a frame around the sand. So take classic D&D. You don't have agency in your character creation, really. You have classes that you can be, and you can be those classes. And if you are a wizard, you just can't do things. You just can't. Original D&D, first edition, AD&D, only thieves could sneak. You can't even try to sneak. You can't. There are no skills. You just cannot sneak unless you're a thief. That's it, right? So conveying a player's sense of agency to them seems to be the most difficult part of it. I agree. And so a lot of systems just don't give you agency from the very beginning, and you get used to that, and then you think that is how it is, and you internalize it, and then when you're given agency, it's very difficult. And so being able to cultivate agency is a difficult thing to do. It's doable, and I find that players often respond really well to it, but you have to cultivate it. Commander Pulsar says, though world building doesn't have to be on a grand scale, like name all the gods, but on a smaller scale, like which member of the town is pissed off at you and why. Oh, that's fair. Although I don't even necessarily think of that as world building. I think of that as character building. Like I think of that as part of character building, but you know, okay, but 5e fixed that. Yes, every class can do everything. You just have to be clever about backgrounds. Yeah, that is true. I remember Ms. Sal being absolutely paralyzed the very first time I tried to make her play Mass Effect. She froze up and could not progress past the very first dialogue choice. Yeah, and some people get analysis paralysis, and that Sandbox is not going to be great for them. Artie Snack says, I'm mostly just muddling along as best I can, trying to take the personal stories of the players and weave them into what's going on in the world, providing something for all of the characters to do. I have a session tonight, so I've been thinking about it a lot right now. There are very few entertainment instances where you get agency, not TV, not movies, not books. The only frame of reference we have is real life. It gets scary. Yes, he's better. And that is true. And that's the thing. You have like no agency in movies. I mean, the only agency you have in movies is how you interpret it. But like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have a lot of agency. And even really video games don't give you a lot of agency, to be honest. So it's not something that we're used to. So it's something you actually have to teach it. You actually have to teach it, and it also involves rethinking narrative completely. Even in 5e, really the only true character choice is what race you want your character to play, and I think this is the reason many people play weird race builds. Oh, yeah. I've not played 4e, but I will one of these days. I don't know. You probably have less agency in life than you like to pretend you do. I have also heard that argument. Krellin, like, I've got a bunch of Marxists who would talk to you about that one who would say yes. So I'm finding Pathfinder 2 has some of those same agency choices. That's interesting that 4E has. So I think one of the things about, for me, when I do a sandbox, because I know that choice is often new, I'm trying to make an Amber campaign. Ooh, and that's what I need to do given the structure of the game. Yeah. Hey, I'm not. That is no shade on Marxists. No shade. One of the things I do is that one of the things I have to think about is how experienced the players are with player agency. If I want to bring them into a sandbox and they have no experience in player agency, I'm going to do things very differently than if they do have experience in player agency. But even if they do, I constrain things a lot in the beginning. So, for example, City of Light and Shadow, the French Resistance campaign that I'm running, is a sandbox. It is a sandbox. It's a timeline sandbox. It's a directional sandbox. But I did not say to the players, hey, it's Paris in 1941. Make a character. Do whatever you want. That was not what I did. I said, hey, I want to run a campaign where the characters are all members of the French Resistance. And you are all part of the same cell working together. So please, would you like to play? I mean, it's going to be sandbox, but the setup is you are all members of the French Resistance. You are all in the same cell working together. And you all have to come up with your framing device. So you need to... Do you want to play in that game? And I have 4 players who are like, yes, I want to play in a French Resistance campaign. And so I constrained them. I didn't say, and this is a constraint that, for example, a lot of D&D has no constraint in that way, that people can kind of like, most of the time when I play D&D, people are like, make a first level character, make a third level character. Like that's the only constraint. Usually the only constraint is, the constraints I get for D&D character creation is what level. Number 1 constraint. 2, what books you can use. Sometimes they're like any book you want, but just not Unearthed Arcana, or they have no constraints on books. And then 3, sometimes alignment, very often not even that. And so you just make whatever character. But I feel like you can be so open in character creation because D&D tends to be very, very linear, so it's fine. But when I'm doing a sandbox, I tend to want that character creation be fairly constrained in some kind of a way. Sandboxes come in different sizes. You give them smaller sandbox to start with, yeah. Yeah, that's a similar setup I used for my VTM Methuselah game, yeah. Also take into account in the agency talk, the right constraints lead to amazing creative choices. Yeah, definitely. So for me, because I want the campaign to have a direction, so it's not so scattered. My main rule, no effing Minotaurs. I learned my lesson after Tree Bear the Druid. So for me, I'm like, okay, I want this game is going to be about the French Resistance, so you got to be in the French Resistance. But no book of erotic fantasy, please. Yes. But after that, right, I said, make characters, and then I asked them, what is your how do you know each other? Like, what is your setup? And they came up with the idea of being at a jazz nightclub, a cabaret. That was their setup. So they did that. I'm like, okay. And so then, but after that setup happens, where we have that setup, they now can do whatever they want. Like, those players can do whatever they want in that campaign, because it's a sandbox. So like, I mean, I've got people doing things in the world, but they can do what they want to do. Their choices. I will throw things at them. Like, what I do is I throw things at them, and they decide what they want to do and what they don't want to do. But there's no, and these players are players who are used to, first off, of the players, all of them GM. Dot GMs, Stiber GMs, GF, Jean-Francois GF, he GMs. Rocket Fox, I believe she's GM'd. And the new player, who's Grimjack Greg, also GMs. So they're all GMs. And I find players who GM are often a little bit more comfortable stepping into that agency space. But they're like, I know that they're not going to be a problem, but I did set up in the beginning, right, that this game has a frame, and like, it's a sandbox, you can do what you want, but the frame is your all French Resistance. And also, I do have people doing things in the world. So there is a constraint, and they seem to like killing Nazis. But I will say, yeah, I let them come up with whatever they wanted, and then took that and will have those choices in how I create the world. Yeah, totally. Now, I will also say, though, that when it comes to this, well, no, I will tell you the things that I wonder who. That's a good question, PH. We have to go and we're going to start in September. I hope to do some Cthulhu Confidential in August, but he and I are going to have to Zoom and talk about it. New player, who of the Chaos are going to... Jean-Francois cannot make it next season because he's going to start in grad school. He got into a master's program, and he's going to grad school this coming year, so he cannot... it's a sandbox on a deserted beach. Yes, Origami Shuriken. Yes, I'm not killing him away. GF, he can come back. His character has got an important mission to do that takes him away from Paris, but he will be back once grad school is good for him. So I just say no drone riggers in Shadowrun 5e, because drone riggers in 5e are several headaches in a container designed to hold at most half a headache. Yes. His vibe is 80, so I think French Resistance person will be Miami Vice, but French police. I want to tell you about some of the problems and and it's philosophical. It's a philosophical problem, and that is, and I was talking to somebody, and this we can actually, City of Light and Shadow is a good example for this. I was talking to somebody about this who is more sort of traditional narrative. Hey, next of kin, he will be on his honeymoon with his lady love. He will not be. He will not be. He will not be on his honeymoon. He's got things he's got to do. Next of kin. Next of kin. What is it? So I think City of Light and Shadow, I may need to head out soon, but you never talked about, oh, you're right, I never talked about San Francisco. Quickest side note about San Francisco. No, quick side note. Do you know what makes me really sad about San Francisco is that the San Francisco I grew up in does not exist anymore. And that makes me really sad. The San Francisco I grew up in, working class people could afford to live there, and like bohemians and all sorts of people who did not have huge amounts of money could live there. I looked at my old the little flat that I grew up in San Francisco, and I looked at the rent is Yeah, but like they really can't afford to live in San Francisco. Like the place that I lived in growing up, which was like, I don't know, $700 rent, it was like a 2-bedroom flat, is like $4,000 for a 2-bedroom flat in San Francisco. Jer asks, have I seen The Last Black Man in San Francisco? I have not, but I have a tab open. You know how I have many tabs in my browsers? One of the tabs that's open is The Last Black Man in San Francisco because I want to remind myself to watch that one. I just want, like, it makes me really sad that the San Francisco that I lived in just doesn't exist anymore. Like the San Francisco I lived in was really cool and it's gone, and it makes me sad. Like it makes me sad that San Francisco just doesn't exist anymore. Same, I'm a San Francisco native and I could hardly recognize the mission after 2-3. Yeah, oh my gosh, right? I grew up in the outer Richmond, and it's just the way, it's hard. You know what I mean? It's hard, because it's not like it changed a little bit, it changed a lot. And when all the people that lived there had to like leave, like it's hard. Like that's hard. That's just hard. That's all. Yeah. Next up, can you understand? It makes me sad too, right? It makes me sad. It makes me sad. It makes me sad to see it because the San Francisco next of kin. You don't have to. I'm going to ask this question, and you don't have to answer. How old are you? I'm just going to place when is your San Francisco? Did they do city renewal there? No. Rich people just came in and decided that they wanted to live there because they thought it was cool. And then they just sort of bought up places and then they made the rent so expensive that poor people couldn't live there anymore. I'm sad that I'm basically locked out of ever moving back. Not that me too, next of kin. Like I'm sad that I'm locked out of moving back too. Like I'm sad that I could never live there. And like that was my home. You know what I mean? Like that makes me super sad. And I realize it wouldn't be the same, but it's not the same because we can't live there anymore. No, Ice Bunny, it was just gentrification. It was the tech boom. Yeah, I'll take gentrification for 400, Alex. Yeah. And the tech boom. Came back to the small town I grew up in after 20 years, and it's unrecognizable. Places exist in time as well. Yes, Commander Pulsar, and that's why my sandboxes are time-based, because the places exist in time as well as space. Gentrification of the Tenderloin is never something I would have believed. Yeah, me too, or Hunter's Point. Like, it's just... Oh, you're 26. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm 48. I just had my birthday a couple days ago. And like my hello, lemon eater. So my San Francisco was like the San Francisco of the 70s and 80s. And that San Francisco just does not exist at all. Like it just, like my, if it wasn't my current, if it wasn't in my current condition, I couldn't live in my hometown. I can't afford $1,400 a month. Yeah. My parents moved to San Francisco. Like my mom moved to San Francisco. She was like, my mom was kicked out of her house when she was 16. And she was like poor, and she moved to San Francisco and she like lived in the park with the hippies, like in the late 60s, or the early 70s. And my dad was a beatnik. And they lived in these residential hotels because San Francisco still had residential, like the United States still had residential hotels in the 70s, which were hotels, but they were made for long-term living. So you would like basically rent a room, and you could get those really, really cheaply. And yeah, and so like not in San Francisco. They shut them all down in San Francisco. They shut them all down in the 80s. Because they didn't like them. The city didn't like them, so they shut them all down. I had some friends who were in Missouri. Yeah, I think they're mostly... No, it's not like a Motel 6, because it's actually an apartment building. Like, it's a full building. They started building them in the 1920s, when young people started moving into cities. They're a little bit more like... They sort of extended stay suites now, but like the entire building was all that. And they were like very cheap. They were not particularly fancy. Usually like it was like just a one room, and like you'd have like a bathroom on the floor, like the bathroom shower on the floor that people would use. It was sort of like, it was more like a dorm really, but not fancy. And you know, they people moved into San Francisco. They lived in those places. Like most of the people that my family, they were all like my mom and dad's circle were all artists and strippers and dancers and painters and poets and all that kind of a thing. And they would live in these places, and you could live there. And it was very bohemian and very funky. It was very funky. And those places don't, like that San Francisco just doesn't exist anymore. Happy belated birthday. Oh, thank you, Forlasanto. You're older than you ever were, and now you're even older, and now you're even older, and now you're older still. Yes. San Fran did give up the funk. It makes me sad. Vesterbro was renovated, and that attracted hipster, and they complain that there are drug users on the streets and use drugs there, and it is not a secret that you can get drugs there. Yeah. So anyway, next of kin, I was, sharing some sadness about the loss of San Francisco. I knew someone who lived in a residential hotel in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and everything but name. Oh yeah, but see, here's the thing. Now they're building dorms. They've got these dorms. They built some in Los Angeles. I think they're going to be building some in Boston. They're dorms for young professionals. They're like residential hotels, but they're not, because they're luxury. They're like luxury dorms, and they're super expensive. Like, you get a room with a roommate, and it still costs you like a couple, $1,500 a month. So that's restaurant hotels were like for people who were like poor. And these are like luxury dorms. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pay $1,500 a month to live with a roommate in a dorm. You're funny. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. It's ridiculous. Yeah, luxury dorm. I was like, oh, come on now. You're right. Like, okay, sure. I don't know about that one. Yep, and soon they will be tied to the company you work for, and then we will be in a cyberpunk future. That's it. Maybe they will come with a mailbox. They'd better. I'm currently designing an insanely luxurious long-term hotel. Sounds like you're being prepped to be assimilated. Oh, Hawkeye. Oh, yes. So scary. Right. So but here's the thing about a sandbox, which is philosophical. Before I tell you how I work to make sandboxes work for new players. Here's the thing about sandboxes that is the problem with sandboxes. They used to pack poor people in like rats. Now you pay a premium for the privilege of packing like Nimloth. This is true. And this is the thing about sandboxes that don't work for a lot of people. And that is that a lot of people are used to the epic story. They're used to beginning, middle, and end. And they're used to a particular kind of arc, and they want that arc. And sandboxes often don't give it to you because that's not how they're designed. Rents are actually going down across the Bay Area with all the COVID chaos. Who knows what happened? Oh, that's interesting, next of kin. I hear rents were going down in Seattle as well. Rissa says, yeah, I get half a 3-bedroom house for my $11.50 a month, but it's not Lux, yeah. Actually, I'm rather surprised that companies aren't buying up small towns and doing exactly that. For Losanto, I totally... Yeah. Reminds me of how in Snow Crash, yep, the author of people living in storage units, yeah. Sandboxes have no climax, and you might not be the default hero, yeah. And if they do have climaxes, it may not be what you think. And actually, this is kind of why I like sandboxes, but there are things that you expect that may not happen, because that's just not how they happen. And there are things that... you do not expect it may happen. And so, for example, I was talking to somebody, and it was a great conversation. We had a really good conversation about narrative expectations. And he says to me, I think I can handle the game where I was really the villain the entire time. He says to me, hey, that ending, the last episode of City of Light and Shadows was kind of anticlimactic, right? Because it just didn't feel like you were taking on the big bad. Like, they were kind of like, they felt that the episode before that, episode 15, was like a big climax that could have been the last episode. But it couldn't have been the last episode because they needed to process the escape. But they were like, that ending where they went to go and like try to, destroy the gas base, that just didn't seem like epic or like a big end to the season. And that is going to be a thing for Sandbox games, is that because you don't have the big bad that you're aiming towards, you may not get that satisfying. We have to decide what is satisfying, right? That satisfying, and we build to the end and then we get it, and then it's like this ba-da. If you just need a bigger explosion. Easy fix. And that's the thing, that sometimes you might end your season of a sandbox in a really quiet place that isn't explosive, and you may not have a traditionally satisfying narrative arc. Do you not go for the history's biggest bad? City of Light and Shadows viewers are just like Angelica. They've never been satisfied. That's true. That is true. And the thing is, and I was trying to say that, and also I was talking to him. It was a good conversation. He was like, I was expecting one of the NPCs to betray them, right? I was expecting like the big double cross, the big double agent. And I was like, well, and he was like, and then you didn't do it. Like you just turned left, you didn't do it. And I was like, well, first off, NPCs can still betray them. Like that is still a possibility, but it's just not what happened, because they didn't do things to encourage that to happen. The players, the NPCs they came into were people who were not, there were NPCs who totally could have double-crossed them, but they did not take those NPCs into their home circle. There are NPCs that totally could double-cross them, but they have done a really good job of making that not be something that those NPCs wanted. That doesn't mean those NPCs may not double-cross them in the future, but they haven't yet, because it wasn't, while it would have been good for a traditional narrative, right? Like if you were, if I were running City of Light and Shadows, a traditional narrative, one, they would not have killed the Arctic wolf in that episode that they did, but they did, so that's fine. Like different things, like I would have pushed off killing Falke to the very end, because that would be like the big danger, and somebody would have betrayed them because that would be like good for the drama. Like I would, if I were trying to do a traditional narrative, I would be shaping things more. I would make sure that there was a betrayal in Act 2. I'd make sure that the big bad doesn't get killed into Act 5. Like I would shape it so that the things happen so that you get that traditionally satisfying story arc. But I'm not right. And if that is what is satisfying to you, you may not find a sandbox satisfying, because you're conditioned. We are all conditioned. Oh, you're heading out to get so much? Go. Thank you, Nick Sigfin. We can commiserate about San Francisco all the time. If you're conditioned to want your narrative in a certain way, that sandbox may not be satisfying. But for me, sandboxes are satisfying in a different kind of a way, but it takes unconditioning the way you think about narrative. Artie Snack says, it's a story of life, which doesn't have an ending really, rather than a constructed story following a familiar structure. Yeah, that's right, Artie Snack. And sometimes, and Levi says, sometimes betrayal is a slow burn. And that is true. I'm just saying, Dirk, I'm just saying that there are things, right? So careful that they pre-avoid the drama of the potential double cross. So careful they pre-avoided the drama. Luke would be a plant. So Krellin says Luke would be a plant. And Krellin. I'm back in Troopers Frozen. Hey, hello, Grinny Mike. I'm not frozen. I'm here. Oh, wait, I'm going to say hello, Grinny Mike. Hello, Grinny Mike. Boom. I would have just scarred the Arctic Wolf very badly. They killed her. And I was like, you know what? The dice did it. So, or Tango's contact with explosives. Oh, good, I'm not frozen anymore. Welcome back. Betrayal came 3 years before it finally revealed itself. Yeah. So Krellin said, Luke would be a plant. So here's the thing. We don't have any players here, right? None of our players are in the game. So we're going to have a little behind the scenes conversation.
Somebody's watching me.
Ooh, I always feel that somebody's watching me and I have no privacy. Whoa, I always feel that somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? Thank you for the follow, G&D Goobs. Welcome in. So I'm going to tell you, and this is between you and I. Don't tell the players. Luke was all season a weak link. Speaking of dice, I have a comment that I have to tell you because I'm doing a thing tomorrow. Luke was a weak link. Luke was a weak link. Luke was a person who very, very easily could have betrayed them, double-crossed them. And in my mind, it was touch and go for quite some time, actually. It was very doable. Krellin, yes. And the only reason why Luke did not betray them was because of Dot. And this is like, the players don't know this. The players don't know this. I've not told them this. I've not told them this for a reason that I will tell you in 4 seconds. But they were... Luke reminds me of the kid at Enemy of the Gates. Yeah, Luke has got problems. You know what I mean? Like, Luke has got serious dad issues. Luke is searching, right? Like, Luke is searching for meaning, for identity, for belonging, for a place to be. Luke has got insecurities. Luke is someone who could be preyed upon. Luke could be turned. Luke could be a good person or not. Luke is in flux. And for a lot of the season, I was like, well, okay, like, Luke's gonna go, but Dot had Regina pull him in and mentor him in a way that he has never been mentored and kept him, it was when she decided to take him on her solo session. Because up until that point in time, I was like, I think Luke's gonna betray you all. Like, it hadn't happened yet in game. It wasn't there yet. Like, it hadn't happened yet. But Luke was close. There were things happening, and I was like, well, but then Regina may be a sad dad, but Regina pulled him in a way that really surprised me. Like, and by the way, this is what I'm going to tell you. This is the thing about Sandbox versus narrative. If I were like doing this as a narrative in a traditional narrative, then he would have betrayed them, right? Because that's good for the story, and that would be like dramatic and all of that. But I'm a Sandbox GM, and I want to find out what the story is. Like, I don't know what the story is. I want to find out what the story is. And I thought to myself, I know Luke, and Luke is a weak link, and Luke could betray them, and that could be cool. But Regina saved him. Regina saved Luke right there at the end of the season. And it could have gone really, really differently, but she saved him because she's a big sister. That was pretty amazing. I loved that. And so for the person I was talking to who's like, oh, isn't it sort of disappointing? Like, I'm disappointed that you didn't give the big narrative twist. And I was like, well, but it didn't happen, right? Like, I as a GM, I'm also playing to find out what happens. I'm interested in what happens. And for me, that Regina was able to stop Luke from turning was really exciting to me. Now, is Luke 100% out of the woods? No. Between you and I, he's not 100% out of the woods. Well, I just found out I have a fusion one shot today in 30 minutes. Oh, you'll be fine. Have fun. Oh, have fun. Greenie Weasley, you can do what you want. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but I think it's really good. Got to get some things done. Oh, you're welcome, Hawkeye. We'll talk more about sandboxes. So for me, the sandbox, you have to sort of change your idea about what a narrative is. For me, I think City of Light and Shadows has a narrative. I think it has a really cool narrative and a really interesting narrative. It just doesn't have the same shape as your traditional narrative that starts here, raises, and then falls, right? That traditional narrative has that particular kind of momentum. Yeah, I'm a fan of playing the game with the GM as opposed to living out the GM's novel. But CC Spider, many people love... That's what they want. They want to live out the GM's novel where they're the star. Like, many people want to be Jason Bourne. That's what they want. They want the big set piece. You know what I mean? Like, they want to get to the big fight on the Zeppelin with, like, you know, like, I mean, that's really what they want. They want to be in that novel. And they want to be the star of the novel. And then they get disappointed when they don't get that. Gene D. Goop says, so for your sandbox DMing, do you have an overarching story and then develop the story beats as the players? I do not. If you have I would say that if you have an overarching story, isn't really a sandbox. I think that having the overarching story makes it more of a narrative rather than a sandbox. So I don't have an overarching narrative. My NPCs have plans. They may have overarching plans, but I don't have overarching plans. And for me to help make the sandbox have momentum, so it doesn't because the problem with the sandbox with no momentum is that players who aren't really self-directed just are like, what am I going to do, right? So I don't. What I do instead is I make sure that I have NPCs who have goals, and then they work towards their goals so that the world is moving, so the world has momentum, and then the players sort of work within that. But yeah, no, for me, a real sandbox doesn't actually have the overarching plot because that would make it more of a narrative game. I let the narrative unfold. My family completely wants to be Jason Bourne, and that's totally legit. The problem that the novelist GMs I've encountered have often come with a very narrow expectation of what the players should be doing. Linear storytelling doesn't equal lack of agency. No, that is true. Linear storytelling does not equal a lack of agency necessarily. And also, the best linear GMs don't make it look linear. You know what I mean? Like, that's the trick of being a really good linear GM, is that you don't make it look linear, but it actually is. And then you have to have linear players. You will have people who want to do that. Yes, Krone says sandboxes have narratives, but they're emergent stories. Right, and I like an emergent story. It's just that emergent stories don't feel like a planned story. And some people want that feeling of the planned story. You know what I mean? One of my favorite parts of the campaign was a sea voyage with a lot of peril, where the party could do very, very little. We were not sailors. It was damn right scary, memorable. Mm-hmm. But that sort of GM sometimes fall into the negative spectrum of railring a bit too much, in my experience anyway. That was kind of what I was getting at. I guess I just worded it poorly. I've been running a sandbox water-based campaign where my players are pure chaos. Sometimes that happens. But again, as I was saying earlier, Genie Goops, one of the ways that I make a sandbox campaign more coherent and less chaotic, because I think people, I don't want a chaotic experience, is that I make sure the players, I give them constraints at character creation. I was like, for the French Resistance campaign, they have to be members of the French Resistance. And they have to, that's it, right? So, or I've done other sandboxes where they all have to be X, Y, or Z, like some kind of constraint so that they have some kind of coherent starting point. And I also, and this is the other thing when it comes to me running sandbox, there are a couple of things that I do to make sandboxes work better. Half hours. The thing is, there are players who love railroading. They love it. Like, there are players who want it. They want to run the Curse of Strahd or Dungeon of the Mad Mage or whatever it is. They really want railroading. That's what they love. That's the experience they want. They just want it done well. And by done well, that means they want it to feel open but not be open. And that's super legit. That's do it if you like it. I mean, to be honest, and Rissa could talk about this, Cthulhu Confidential is a module, and it has an end. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And it is a, I mean, it's not linear, but it's, because there's maze. But my job as a GM when I'm running that module is to make the players feel as open as possible while getting them to the end. Modules are railroady. You know what I mean? Like most modules are railroady. It's just that you have to have the skill to make it not seem railroady. And you have to enjoy doing that, if that's what you want to do. Nimloth says, part of me wants to try and run a campaign where I take Dresden Files, Monster Hunter International, Philip K. Dick, throw them in a blender and see what pops out. Oh, that would be fun. G&D Goobs, the players have ties into the story, but my friends just sometimes choose the most chaotic option that has the craziest result. They're linked to different factions, but they like to do crazy things. If I have players like Grinny, so what I'm hearing is that Trooper needs me to run a game. If I know I have players who are chaos players, I design the game totally differently. I just designed the game for chaos. I was like, okay, if you just want chaos, I will give you chaos. I know, and that's fine. Like I said, it was an opinion piece and not a journal. So, I personally am not, how do I put this? Half-house term, how do I put this? Personally, I'm not the biggest linear storyteller person. It's like not I can do it. And to be really upfront, I will do it for one-shots. Because with one-shots, you don't have the time. Like sandboxes for me work best when you have time to let them breathe, because the beauty of a sandbox, like for me, what makes a sandbox like what I love about them is that is player agency. They respond to players' actions, right? That the things that players do have an impact on the world in a really cool and interesting way, but that takes time to develop. And so for me, a really good sandbox doesn't come into its own until after things have grown, until you've had time to think for things to expand. And so I find that sandboxes don't really work well in one shots or for a couple of sessions. And so if I'm going to run a one shot, I'm going to have to run something that's linear, because that's what you do in a one shot, especially at a con. Got to develop those skills. But Curse of Strahd is more open. Oh, very interesting. The player has to find the breadcrumbs, but the GM is there to help that happen and make it fun and terrifying. Yeah. Origami Shuriken says, one of my favorite things about Dark Matter has been taking the mostly unconnected modules in Saltmarsh and stitching them together with bits of story I get from the player. Sometimes they will have only vague idea of how to connect the storyline into the next episode. And then suddenly, as we're playing, the next piece falls into place. Yeah, I love exploring that. Pretty much what I did. They have fun, but sometimes it feels like I'm running into a narrative standstill in NPCs. COS is the Elder Scrolls Realms of Sandbox. Oh, that's so interesting. Oh. Yeah, with one-shots, I feel a lot better about pushing players along, because it's a one-shot, right? The campaign writes itself when you hear the player's theories, says C Spider. Yes. Yes, totally, me too. So for me, right, if I want to make a sandbox work well, there are a couple of things I need to do. One, for me, I make sure that the NPCs and the factions in the world have their own plans and goals. It's like a goal-directed sandbox, right? So the world has goals. As a GM, I don't have goals. And what I mean by that is the big bad is really invested in X, Y, and Z. I personally am not the big bad is not me. I'm not the big bad. I am not invested in the big bad winning or losing. The big bad is going to do all the things the big bad is going to do, but I personally am not invested in the big bad. The Arctic Wolf, she had plans. She was going to do some stuff. She was working out some things. It didn't happen. That's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I am not personally invested in the NPCs getting what they want or not getting what they want. But I am making sure that NPCs have goals and they do things. Your goals are all meta. The players having fun is my goal, to tell a good story. Yes, that's exactly right. Now, the other thing that I do, I think is really, really important in a sandbox game, and I think this is actually really quite important, that the players have to have goals. So I tend to ask the players in a sandbox game, what is your long-term and what is your short-term goal? And I tend to have them think about what their long-term and short-term goals are. I think that having that conversation before the game even starts is really important in a sandbox game. And this is something that a lot of RPGs are not used to. They're not used to asking their players that. Rarely do you ask your standard D&D player, "Hey, what is your character's short-term and long-term goal?" And for the current sandbox game, I mean, the best thing is when I surprise my DM with my long-term goal. Yeah, like I think that to make your sandbox game work really well, ask your players what their short-term and long-term goals are. Now, one of the reasons why I ask is not because I need to know so that I can help them achieve that, which also I'm doing, by the way, or frustrate that or help work that out. Like I do that. Like I want to know so that I can be a good partner to my players. But I mostly ask because I need the players to know. Because the thing that makes a sandbox work is the players have to have motivation. They have to have goals. They have to have something that they want. If you have players who come into a sandbox and they have nothing that they want, that sandbox is not going to work as well. So one of the keys to having a sandbox work well is to have players who have characters who want things, that have motivations. And since many players are not used to having things they want, because GMs almost never care, right? Like, why make goals if the GM is never going to do anything with it? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the reasons why many players don't make backstories or don't make goals, is because they're used to having GMs that just don't, where it's just, they don't do anything about it. So then why do that work if it's not going to come up? But for a sandbox, it's crucial that your players have goals, things that they want, and so like they have goals, the NPCs have goals, like everybody has goals, things that they want, things that they need, right? Like, what is your want? What is your need? Make sure that you have characters that have that. And then once you have characters that have that have some kind of cohesion to them, and then you have a world with characters that have wants and needs, then you can just open the gates to the sandbox. And then I find that works much, much better. Your sandbox is much more likely to work well if you have players who my last D&D campaign, Torvald the Turtle's goal was to find the missing goddess and confront her about her actions that led to the death of his family. That's a great long-term goal. Right? So you want your characters to have long-term and short-term goals. You want to give them some sort of cohesion. You want to have NPCs that have long-term and short-term goals, wants and needs. And then you can sort of put them in this sandbox and actually have some kind of movement, right? Some kind of momentum, because you want the sandbox to have momentum to it. And the narrative may look different than a traditional narrative, but as long as you have momentum, goals, and wants, then it's more likely to turn out well. And then your players are more likely to have fun. But here's the trick. You have to show the players, sometimes have a meta conversation with them, that what they're doing matters. I want to talk to them about Luke, but I can't yet because Luke is not actually out of the woods. I think that like his chances of being a double crossing them is actually very low now because of the work that Dot has done. There is still a chance, and it has to do with his father. His father is his weak link, and his father is in the game. I mentioned his father. You did not know it. His father was mentioned, but I don't think anyone made the connection of who his father is. So you have not seen his father, but his father has been mentioned, and his father is in the world, and his father is a weak link for Luke. So Luke is not out of the woods completely. It is much less likely he will double cross them now because of the work that Dot has done. And so I cannot tell Dot yet that because Luke is not out of the woods, but once Luke is out of the woods of being a double crosser, well, I will let them all know. But it's the ability to change the world in interesting ways that really is the beauty of a sandbox. And so you have to let them know that happens. And I did that, and I have done different things to let players know that they actually matter, that they matter in the world. Nimble says, Vulpus, I agree. Not a big fan of the author as a person, but he's a good writer, at least with the MHI stuff. I couldn't really get into other series. And I think that's important to let the players know that they're making a difference, because that is the beauty of the sandbox, that they're making this really interesting difference. And like with my cyberpunk campaign, I actually just did a newspaper where they could see that they were making differences in the world through like newspaper articles. Sometimes you do like a town crier that will do it, or news accounts, finding different ways. And I'm trying to find the best way to let them know. I think they're seeing a lot of their repercussions sort of coming to see them, so that's pretty good. But a little bit more in there. Just let them to know. Yes, you mean Tango is really Luke's father? I'm your father, Luke. Luke did say what his father. He said his father was a police officer. His father was one of the gendarmerie. And his father is actually. Do you remember a couple episodes back when Team Chaos was about? And they found out it was Tango and Sylvie were running about, and they learned that there was a brand new chief of police, and the new chief of police is Luke's father. His father, Luke's father is the new chief of police in Paris. So his father is not insignificant, and his father is a weak link. Is a weak link for Luke. At the moment, it looks to me less likely that Luke will betray them, but you never know, because I don't know what's going to happen with his father yet. So, I mean, I will find out, but I don't yet know, so I can't tell them that yet, but we will see. I mean, maybe it will be resolved by the end of season 2. We will get there. All right, I want to tell you something that I have done to help get players into a sandbox who are really not used to sandboxes at all. And what I did was, although it was actually very difficult for me to do this, I worked real hard on this. I was only partially successful, but I got them there in the end, sort of, but not the way I thought I would. I was running a GURPS Traveler Interstellar Wars campaign for this group of players. It was a group I was in Los Angeles that only played D&D. Like, they only played D&D, and that was it. They were like all D&D all the time, and they were a little in before the team murders Luke's father. Hey, they might do, but if they do, would that be good or bad for Luke? Right? So here's I have heard of the Traveler. So, like, I mean, here's the thing. Luke's father is in play in the world, and I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't know how he'll respond if they kill the father. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what will happen if Luke's father finds Luke again. There are some questions. The team makes Luke kill Luke's father to protect them. I mean, like, I don't, like, because basically I don't know what's going to happen with that, but there are pieces coming into play that I'm very excited about. So, this is like a real. They weren't. I wouldn't call them murder hobos per se. This D&D group might have looked like murder hobos, and they were kind of murder hobos. But now that Luke is not a betrayal vector, it makes perfect sense to just very tragically kill him. He almost died in that last episode. But he didn't. But you can't die during character creation. Is it really Traveler? That's a good question. When you get an all-barred party murder oboe, he did say he doesn't think he could kill his dad. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with Luke. Because the reason why I don't know is because I know where Luke is at right now, personally, and that is he was much more of a risk than he is right now, but he's not a risk. He's just like, his risk level is very, very small now. But his father is in play, and his father could be a problem. So I don't know what will happen. I'm excited to find out. If you're not a murder hobo, where is your home, and how long has it been since you killed someone? Okay, so they did not have a home, and they killed a lot of people. but I would call them very heavy tacticians. Like they were super, super gamist tacticians where it was all about the challenge. Like it was like the GM would give like really big, heavy tactical challenges, and everybody was like super optimized their character. And this was like 3.5, D&D 3.5, so there was a lot of optimization. They're like, okay, what is the best prestige class? Here's the best feat. Like it was all like super, super hyper optimization so that you could kill the things. And it was just about like increasingly more and more difficult tactical challenges, and getting like, so it was murder hobo-y, but it was not like, it was very tactical. Was very tactical. Now I want to describe my bag of holding as a magic bindle and a stick. Ooh, nice. It was like deep, deep optimization for tactical purposes, and it was not super heavy on RP. I was not having a good time. So, and I was like, look. It was like Barrett, it was like a power hero tactical game is what it was. Oh God, I drifted off while you were describing the group. Sorry. Yeah, you know. And the thing is, for me personally, I don't find, thank you, Rissa. I don't find D&D's combat very satisfying. I find other systems combat, like I can enjoy some really good tactical combat. I really can. I just tend to find other game systems combat more tactically interesting. So I'm playing a game full of like power hero tactical people, but I don't find D&D's tactics very interesting, so I was not having the most fun. But so I was like, okay, I really see, can I convince them to play something other than D&D at some point in time? And the answer was generally no. But I finally got them to play like a really short GURPS spy thing, like real like high powered, you know, and they enjoyed that. So they did let me run GURPS Traveler Interstellar Wars. And I was like, okay, I want to introduce them to like a good sandbox sort of a game where they get agency, like the whole thing that I really like to, I really want to introduce that to them. But these are D&D players who have never really had that agency and also have never really, they just haven't had that agency. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? This is what I did. This was my plan. And it actually worked really well. By the end of the game, by the end of that campaign, I didn't get to do a second season, which made me sad, but by the end of the first season, they were there. Savage Worlds, GURPS, any of the Master games, Space Master, Harn Master. The Witcher has really interesting combat too. So like there are a bunch of things that have really interesting combat that I was like, ooh, that's fun. Even Fate has interesting combat. It's very, very different, Fate's combat, because it's quite light, but you can do really kind of like, I would love to play in a really combat heavy Fate game, because there are cool things you can do with it. Like if you're thinking tactically, you can do some very cool things in Fate that I'm hoping to cultivate that in my players, and I feel like they're getting better at it. Have you had a look at the Song of Ice and Fire social combat? I have Song of Ice and Fire. It's in storage right now. I think I have the PDF, maybe. We'll see. I've not looked at it completely, but Clockwork Dominion has a social combat, as does House of the Blooded. I found it to be an interesting mechanic, compose your damage. Yeah, oh, and actually also Witcher has social combat too. Yeah, so like that's right. Anyway, this is what I did, and this was my experiment to sort of bring people who have never had experience with a sandbox, have not had experience with a lot of player agency, and who have not had a lot of experience with deep RP, how I brought them into this world. So first off, I was like, okay, very, very constructed character creation. I said, it's a campaign, and I would actually run this setup again because I thought it worked really well, and I would run it again. And the thing was, I was like, okay, there is a ship, a small free trader ship that's going on a trip from this one planet to this other planet. It's going to be like a long, it's like a 6-month trip. Like it's like a long distance they have to travel. So the ship is going to travel from point A to point B. It's because it has some cargo, like this long distance cargo. And the captain of the ship, because I was playing the captain, is advertising for crew members. We need an engineer, a pilot, pilot, comms, pilot, navigator, engineer, trader, and medic. Those are the 5 positions that they needed. And I was like, okay, those are the 5 positions. I had 5 players. Hey, 5 players. These are the 5 positions. Which one do you want? Everybody took their position, and I said, here's my question. Why do you want to tell me why your character wants to go on a deep space, 6-month deep space voyage? They'll take you away from this planet for at least a year. And so they all came up with their backstories. Genesis has intersocial combat as well. Pretty much the same rules as physical combat, but attacks stress track instead of physical. And I was like, okay, so it's going to be like a year-long trip. The captain is an NPC. There's also like one other NPC in there. And so it was the trip where they were going was set. They were going from point A to point B with stops along the way because they had to stop basically every 2. They had like a jump drive of 2, so they had to stop every 2 jump sectors. And so they would stop at these different planets along the way. And on the planet, they could do whatever they wanted, right? So on the planet was a very open world sandbox, but the actual trajectory itself was a fixed point A to point B. There was a plot that was going on in that there were bad guys who had things they were wanting to do. Bad guys had things they were wanting to do. Whether or not they wanted to get involved in that was a different thing. But I had these things built up. And I also made it so that, and this was the thing that really, I think, was really important to helping them understand agency, was that I made that many of the planets that they arrived at were, how do I put this? So I said it, so in Interstellar Wars, there's a lot of really heavy tension between the Vellani, which is like the big human empire, space empire, and the humans, the Terrans. But it's in a moment where we're not in a war at the moment. But like tensions are very, very high. And politically, it's a very unstable situation. And I made a lot of the planets that they stopped off at also quite unstable. That there's a lot of tension, a lot of instability in the universe is happening in these planets. And they could do whatever they wanted. And what they did was a little bit of chaos. And then that chaos destabilized really unstable things, and they saw it happen. They realized that, oh, actually, we can like, it actually matters what we do. They actually helped change the government. There was this government that had basically a bit of a coup based on some of their actions. And it wasn't just like, because the thing about chaos people is that chaos people often just want chaos. They're like, chaos. But all of a sudden, when they're chaos, all of a sudden it actually results in a coup that changes the government on this one planet. It switches one planetary governor to another planetary governor. Now, that happened because that other planetary governor was wanting to do this coup, but couldn't get a foothold in. And the players destabilized things enough that happened. And they were like, oh, the things we do are actually, they actually matter. So the players saw that the things they did actually mattered for real, that they could do things that would change the world. Not just me being like, oh, fine, you just ruined stuff, whatever, Roxwell already dies, or you just do some chaos but it doesn't really matter. But it did, it mattered. And as they were traveling through this journey from point A to point B, they made allies, and those allies sometimes were important. They destabilized some things or stabilized some other things. And as they were moving, they realized that hey, Wax Steven, how are you? We're talking about sandbox games and how I bring players who are not used to sandboxes into sandboxes. And so when they realize that their actions do actually affect the world for real, that they do matter, then all of a sudden they wanted to do things, right? They stopped being chaos monkeys actually, because I think oftentimes chaos monkeys are chaos monkeys because they feel like nothing they do matters, right? They feel like, I'm going to do chaos because, I'm just going to kill the mayor of the town because nothing else matters, right? But once they realize that what they do does matter, then all of a sudden, oh, right? It's still echoey. I've got to work on some of the acoustics, but I'm going to get there. that it mattered to them. Then all of a sudden they became, they realized they had agency, and they transformed. They transformed from people who didn't think they had any agency and were just going to like follow along, to people who started making plans and doing things and being like very intentional about the things they want to do. It was beautiful. As they progressed on this journey from point A to point B, they became amazing. They were so, and it was that moment where they realized that they mattered as players, and it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Like, it was just like, I was like proud Papa GM right there in that moment. Yeah, Half Horse, that's a big truth right there. Yeah. Half Horse Hermit, I have a what do document somewhere for SIFRP. It basically has all of the rules of the various conflicts stripped out into a document. Ooh, and I think it has some commentary explaining weak points. I'll post it in Discord if I don't remind me. Oh, please post it in Discord. Please do. Yeah, I just think I need a rug, and I think I'll be good. Yes, ruin case monkeys so they can never ignore consequences again. But the thing is, consequences don't have to be bad. Some of those consequences were really good. And once they realized that as a GM, I'm not out to get them, right? Like, because that's the thing for me, as a Sandbox GM, I'm not out to get the players, right? I think of myself as neutral. I think of myself as like, I'm just like I'm the caretaker, right? Like, I'm here to just, really what I'm here is to torture your characters a little bit psychologically, emotionally. That's what I'm here for, really, because I want to find out who your characters are. But like if you do good things, then you do good things. Then you get good consequences. If you do bad things, you get bad consequences. Sometimes you do bad things and get good consequences. Sometimes you do good things and get bad consequences. Like, it's like we're gonna, hey, come on, we're gonna just find it out. Like I said, with the GM, not versus the GM. Yeah. And I will emotionally torture those players because that's what I'm about, but like in a good way. But I will tell you one thing that was funny about those players. And this makes me laugh all the time. For ours says to Harlo Santo, yeah, they've amended many rules. Oh, good, and created some variations they use, as they're all heavily involved in TTRPG anyway. Two of them working for Modifius, all the players with heavy GM experience. They got their own system to streamline the Oh, nice. I heard that there was some, I don't know if this is true, but I heard there was some, what's the word? Broken things in Ice and Fire. Some things that, there were some ways to become like a little bit broken combat-wise. I wonder if they've fixed them. I don't know if that's true, but I wonder if they fixed them. My pirate GM has been great at letting me feel like I'm making headway with making friends with the NPC pirates while still having them be evil pirates. Oh, that's great. So can I tell you the one thing it was really, really good about this this campaign? I had one plan. I had only one plan as a GM for this campaign. One plan only. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't gotten that far into myself, just a bit past house creation. House creation's so cool! I want to run that game at some point in time because... But also, by the way, if there's like a broken system, players that won't break it, like it's fine if the players don't break it. Yeah, I loved it too. I was like, ooh, how cool is this? So like, it's one of those things that I also need to check out Pendragon. That's another one I have to check out. Oh no, I'm so sorry about the ramen on the floor. Only the big valuable stuff left, TV and PC? Cool on. Oh, the move. Oh. Yeah, I want to try it out too. So here's the one. I had one plan as a GM. One. And as a Sandbox GM, I don't tend to have meta plans. I just let things emerge. We need to play a game since Gen Con isn't happening normally. I know. I'm going to feel like now I'm in a new place. I'm going to try to... I need to figure out how I can do GURPS on Roll20 in a way that I like. That's what I need to figure out. That's what I need to figure out. That's going to be my challenge. I'm going to have to explore custom character sheets. Yeah, if players are responsible in Song of Ice and Fire and don't intentionally try to break it, it works well. Yeah. So let me tell you what my one meta plot was for that campaign that the players would not let me do. They wouldn't let me do it. I had, again, normally for Sandbox, I just let things emerge. I don't have plans. I had one plan and they ruined my plan over and over and over again. Over and over and over regularly. And the one plan was I was going to kill the captain. Like, my goal was to kill the captain of the ship so that one of the players would become the captain, and then the players would be able to do, like, they would be in charge. Like, I started them off with the captain of the ship, but my plan was to kill the captain so that then, like, basically I wanted to give them that run from point A to point B so they could see how everything worked, so they could learn it all, like, with the captain there to, like, basically kind of be their tutorial, as it were. And then I was going to kill the captain. I was like, yeah, and the captain's going to die. And then here was the idea was that, like, get from point A to point B, the captain's going to die. And then once they get to point B, they can go wherever they want. Like, it becomes their choice. And it's all like, they've had their tutorial on how to do a sandbox. I kill the captain. They're now in charge. And ta-da! Everything is great. And they kept saving the captain. They kept saving the captain. Like, they kept saving the captain. It was epic. And I tried to kill that captain so many different ways. And they were like, nope, our captain is not dying. They kept her alive the entire time. And I tried so hard to kill that captain. Origami Shuriken says, I love sitting in chat here because I get so many ideas. I just figured out my plot hook for a second season of Dark Matter. Ooh! Origami, I want to know what the plot hook is, but I feel like you shouldn't tell me because I'm going to guest in that show. I mean, you can if you want to. I want to give you the ship. Players, let me kill the captain. Save the captain, save the world. For Los Santos. Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Saving the doomed NPC becomes a mascot. Did they ever let the captain die? No. And can I tell you why? They didn't let the captain die for a very specific reason that was very interesting. It was and look, I wanted to kill the captain so they could have, like, full agency and do whatever they wanted. But they saved the captain over and over for kind of sketchy reasons. Like, you think it's because they love the captain and they're like, oh, we love the captain, we don't want her to die. That wasn't actually it. I mean, that might have been part of it. Like, I don't want to sell them short. That might have been part of it. But there was another reason why they kept the captain alive, which was pretty brilliant. And the captain was, how do I put this? Spoiler. The captain actually worked for Terran Naval Intelligence. Was she hot? She was fine. She worked for Terran Naval Intelligence. She was a spy, basically, and the trip they were taking was in Volani territory. Like they were taking the ship from point A to point B, but that entire journey was Volani territory. So she was a captain of this ship, but what she was really doing was spying on the Volani and sort of taking notes, seeing what their troop movements were like, seeing what everything, like, what their setup was for Terran intelligence. The engineer knew that. The player who was playing the engineer knew that and was sort of in on it. And because she was a spy, once they got to the ship, she was like, hey, crew, you go and do all the trading and all the stuff you need to do. I've got some stuff I have to do on the side. So she would be gone most of the time, leaving them to do whatever they wanted. That was part of my setup, to let them to do whatever they wanted. Was she would be gone. What is that? Waxman says, for some reason, I found whenever I've given players a ship in any form, they have no desire to be in charge of piloting it or the destination. That's so interesting. Almost like they want to avoid the possibility of failure and destroying the party because of it. Yeah, Waxman, nobody wants the responsibility of being the party leader. It's interesting. I also sometimes you do. Sometimes you find people who really do. Like, I want to think about that with another sort of context. But anyway, but the main reason is because the captain, the pilot, was the person who would become the captain next. He was like the second in command. The pilot was a huge goody two-shoes. He was like, there is no lawful good. There's no alignment in GURPS. But if there was an alignment, he would be lawful good. And you just have to join the cast for season 2 and you'll find out. But we should talk schedules. Yes, we should. Now that I'm in here, we should talk about it. So he was... The pilot was very much a goody two-shoes and didn't want to do illegal things in an epic way. And the rest of the crew were less that. One of the players was on the run from the mob, was like a mob. the person who was the trader, the merchant, sort of the purser, was an accountant for the mob who'd like stolen from the mob and was like, I need to get out of here. So that's why she got on the ship. She was like, I'm going to be the accountant for the merchant for this ship because I stole from the mob and they're out to get me. So she was on the run from the mob. The steward, the medic was also a little bit sketchy. The engineer was sketchy. Like the pilot was sketchy. They were all pretty sketchy and they were all pretty good with doing illegal things. And they knew that if the pilot was the captain, they wouldn't be able to do so. So they kept the captain alive so that they could keep doing sketchy things. It was pretty awesome. I laughed. I laughed quite a lot on that one. Like that one made me like, because they only kept her alive because they knew that they wouldn't be able to get away with shenanigans if the goody two shoes pilot was the captain. And so that was hilarious. Oh, go have a good time, PH. We're ending the stream right now anyway, but have a good time. Thank you for being here, PH. My brain just went to Kenneth from 30 Rock when you described the pilot. Yeah, actually, a little bit. And the thing about the pilot was he was also quite naive. He wasn't like the smartest, most perceptive person. So as long as the captain was around and the player was fine, it wasn't player conflict, although it would be PC conflict. But the pilot just never knew. The pilot just never realized they were doing sketchy things, so it worked out. But they knew they had to keep the captain alive if they wanted to keep doing illegal things. Yeah, doing good things if you want to keep doing bad things. Yes, but why would the pilot have become the captain? The pilot would have become the captain because the pilot was qualified. In order to captain, like, there are qualifications that unless you want to be pirates. Like, if you want to be pirates, then you can do whatever you wanted to do. But the pilot would not have gone along with that. But like, if you like within the system, you actually have to be qualified to be. You have to have a captain certification. So there's a certification process, and the pilot was the communications officer. Could have gotten that certification, but didn't want to. None of the other, the pilot would have been captain. I think would have been happy to be captain. None of the other players, the navigator was qualified, and could have gotten the qualification, but didn't want to be the captain. They just didn't want the pilot to be the captain. Like, that was what it was. It was that sort of, there was a bunch of shenanigans. They had this moment as an example of their illegalness. They went to the first planet they went to was a planet that had basically a big fight club. It was like a big bare knuckle brawl sort of tournament. And I put that in there so I could get them practice with combat. But the thing is, this particular planet was run by somebody who was basically independent and sort of not aligned. And so this big brawl ends up being a proxy for larger galactic politics, right? So like the Vellani Navy would put somebody in there to fight. Vellani hardliners would put in somebody to fight. Vellani people who are friendly to humans would put somebody, Terrans would put somebody to fight. So like the whole like fight club ends up being this proxy, like Cold War proxy battle. And the pilot was like, hey, I want to fight in this fight. And the guy's like, okay, sure, you can fight. But they were given a mission that they could have turned down if they wanted to. But the governor of the planet said, hey, you are not from here. You're not like part of this whole system. I would like to give you a mission, and that is, could you just make sure that the Vellani hardliner does not win this tournament, right? Basically. This is basically the plot of my GURPS game I'm making to learn GURPS, right? So like they're basically like, don't like, could you sort of like how BattleTech has houses who have mech pilots on Solaris. Yes, exactly like that. And the governor for this planet, this planetary governor, was like, can I hire you to just sabotage the champion for the Vellani hardliner? Because the Vellani hardliner, if that Vellani hardliner faction sort of took over, it would be bad for that planetary governor, who was basically, because the Vellani hardliners, what they would want to do is shut down all trade with the Terrans, and this one planet is the first planet right next to Terran space, so what it does is do trade. Like that's what it does. And if like the hardliners get control of power, this planetary governor's gonna be screwed. So what he wanted to do was to sort of hire our crew to sabotage the Volani Hardliner champion so that they don't win. That's all that he wanted. And then the pilot decided that he wanted to fight in the... Would Cobra Kai just put someone into battle? So the pilot's now fighting. And it becomes this amazing thing where they're trying to sabotage, right, this person. And here's the thing I need to know about the pilot. It's really important. The pilot doesn't have any fighting skills. The pilot decides he wants to get into this big fight, but he is not a fighter. He doesn't have fighting skills. I don't know how else to tell you. He does not have points in brawl. He's not a competent fighter. So that's bad for him. And so the first round, they give him these drugs. They get these very illegal drugs. They inject him with these illegal drugs that give him these big combat boosts, and he's able to win his round. And he decides that is cheating, and he does not want to cheat. And so he refuses to take these drugs because that would be cheating. He is not competent enough to fight on his own, however. And what ends up happening is, right. See, Barator is correct. Pilot, I can do this. Rest room. No, not really. But here's some drugs. So we end up getting to the final match, right? Which is the pilot versus the Volani Hardliner. And the pilot refuses to cheat. And the rest of the players know that the pilot will lose to the Volani Hardliner, and the whole mission was to make sure that this guy fails. And so what they did, it was so good, was they did a whole heist where they snuck into the locker room and they put the combat drugs in the Volani Hardliner's water. And so the Volani Hardliner champion is drinking the water in the battle, like destroys our pilot, beats him up so bad. Also, our pilot doesn't have any combat skills and had no bonuses at that point in time. Just like totally destroys him. And then they call for a drug test, and then the Volani Hardliner comes up positive for doing the drugs, and then the Volani Hardliner is disqualified, and the pilot wins the match on the technicality. They spiked Mr. T's milk. And so it was this whole big deal. And it was very, very epic, but they had to go behind the pilot's back because the pilot wouldn't cheat. So like, okay, we're still going to cheat. We're going to cheat in a way that doesn't, it was good.
Name game.
Oh, name game. The name game. Come on, everybody. I said, now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name, I treat it like it wasn't there. And then a B or an F or an M will appear. And then I say bow at a B, then I say the name, then banana, fanner, and foe. And then I say the name again with an F, very plain, then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can't rhyme. Hrothgar, but Hrothgar, banana, fan up for Hrothgar, fee, fi, mo, Hrothgar. Hrothgar, Ooh, thank you for the resub, Hrothgar. Yeah. Pilot, I don't want to cheat. Ooh, Vulpes, banana, fana for Vulpes, fee, fi, mo, mopes. Vulpes, 39 months. What? Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Thanks for that resub, everybody. Yay. Oh, I love those notes. I love the notes and the mic. I love them so much. So much. Look, y'all, it is 3:15. So let me wrap it up. So for me, like I had a campaign plan wherein the campaign started quite structured, wherein it was purposely unstable so they could see that their choices mattered and were important to the world and that they could do things. And then I brought them to a space where they could have that agency. And in the end, I planned to kill the captain and cut them loose so they could have full, complete agency. But they decided they had more agency keeping the captain alive than having her dead. And I was really excited to see what would happen with that crew after that game, after that season. But then I left Los Angeles. That said, I would run more Traveler Interstellar Wars. I would run that game again. That was really good. That said, I gotta go, but I have to tell you something. This is really important. Tomorrow, I'm on Tavern Talks over on Polished Cryptids channel at 4 p.m. Eastern. We are talking about role-playing versus role-playing. Role, R-O-L-E, versus role, R-O-L-L. Role-playing versus role-playing. I think we're going to be talking about dice a lot. And you know, I'm a big fan of dice telling stories, but I know a lot of people are not, and they find dice sort of ruin stories rather than sort of make the story. So we're gonna be talking about dice and role narrative and that kind of stuff tomorrow at 4 p.m. on Polished Cryptids channel. You can see me there. Next week on Wednesday at 11 a.m. I will be over on Praxagora, that's Mephoria's channel. I will be we're gonna be doing a salon. We're gonna be just chatting. We're gonna be doing a chat. I don't know. We're gonna be chatting about nerdy things. What nerdy things? I don't know yet, but something nerdy and awesome. And then, of course, Thursday and Saturday as normal. It'd be weird if it was a role playing versus role playing and just one big dice roll off ultra. That would be amazing. And then I would bring out the D100 or the D30. It'd be great. It'll be good to continue talking about sandboxes on Discord. It will be Discord. Hey everyone, I have a Discord. If you'd like to, meet us there, you can, because we're very, very cool. Yeah, Prax is good and nerdy and awesome. Sadly, I usually can't really pay attention. It's the morning, you know. So join my Discord if you like. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Academic Foxhole. I tweet not at all, and then I do long philosophical threads. And then also, you can find me at Academic Trooper SJP on YouTube, where I have the archive of these shows and maybe new things coming in soon. And then also I have a Patreon, which is Academic Foxhole, and that Patreon goes to support the RPGs on the stream. And I'm really happy to say that with Patreon and tips and bits all together, it only cost me $180 to produce season City of Light and Shadow. So basically, it was like pretty good. And we're going to be doing Cthulhu Confidential sometime really soon, probably August or end of July, probably August. And I'm going to be, after our stream, when I take out some trash and eat some food and unbox some things, I'm going to start reading 1,000-Year-Old Vampire so that maybe we can do another solo stream before all of that happens. That's the goodness. All right. Thanks for this chat, all. This was awesome. I need to go back to the VOD. I did miss quite a bit still. Oh, no worries. Hey, Atomica, don't even worry about the lurkiness. I love lurkers. That's great. Seems like a lot, I'm ambitious. I don't know. But the thing is, I don't know whether or not 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is a good one-shot. If it's a one-shot, then we'll be good. It's just that book's kind of long, so I have to do a bunch of reading. Anyway, not the point. The point is, take care, everybody. You all are wonderful. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for welcoming me back. I hope that I will get a mailbox key so I can get the command scripts that I ordered when they get delivered. And then I can put up like a sound dampening curtain that I have right up there. And then my sound will be a little bit less echoey the next time you see me. I mean, I don't know if it'll be for Thursday, but it will be. It will be. Take care, everybody. You all are the best. And I'm going to try to figure out what's going on with my PS4. It's mysterious. Oh, yeah, I should order groceries, too. I'm going to order groceries. I will do that today. Today's going to be like a planning, and it's going to be great. I'm gonna go have a sandwich right now. I'm going to have a sandwich. Take care, everybody. Oh, we should see if we should raid. We should raid. Let's see who we can raid. Let's raid. We should raid someone. but I don't know if I want to raid anyone. I don't know if I want to raid anyone, everybody. Yeah, let's raid roll for it. We're gonna raid roll for it. This is our raid command. Are they live right now? Let's see. They seem to be on break right now. They seem to be on break. They're on break. So you know what we should do? We should raid Luxie Games because Luxie is really cool, and we should raid her. And she's currently playing. So we're gonna raid Luxie. We're gonna raid Luxie. And this is our raid command. So go give Luxie. It's just an excuse for delayed sandwich intake. That's all. But I'm gonna have my sandwich. It's gonna be really good. So this is our command raid. We're gonna go say hi to them. Take care, everybody, and I'll catch you on the flip side and give some love to Luxie. Bye, everybody.